I become the Demon King in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251, The Chinese Resistance Alliance in the Multiverse. Lin Hao's happier days grew as he made the changes. The base universe had already escaped Marvel's control and would become a stronghold for resistance against Americanism, so it naturally needed to be localized. What could be more effective than cultural invasion? Director Lin had thus developed a new use for his magic pen. Any future Eastern elements could be incorporated into the base universe rules, aiming to transform the base into a red base hidden within the Marvel multiverse. This way, the editorial department's identity should be sustainable for the long term. With this in mind, Lin Hao, after completing the changes, used android technology to create a body identical to his disguised identity, imbuing it with painting, editing, and photography skills. Lin Hao certainly wouldn't be so foolish as to create a clone using his own cells, especially since the disguised identity didn't look like him. After being ripened by the power of time, a perfectly formed android emerged from the incubator. After a moment's reflection, Lin Hao realized he hadn't imbued the android with any extraordinary abilities. However, with his powerful body alone, the android could maintain basic self-preservation in this demon-free real world. After some thought, Lin Hao summoned Zora from the Devil's Contract. Artificial intelligence was a breeze for Lin Hao now. It wouldn't take him long to create. With the power of the magic pen, he could even imbue it with life. But Zora was different. He had previously been a special life form, and now he was under contract. Lin Hao even discovered he couldn't alter Zora's design by modifying the original comics or the master tapes, indicating he had been freed from Marvel's control since signing the contract. This confirmed Lin Hao's earlier suspicions about the Devil's Contract. After completing everything, Lin Hao brought the android and Zora's spirit out. He was still in his real-world apartment. From now on, you'll stay in this world. You don't need to take any initiative. Just quietly gather information online. Pay special attention to the developments of Marvel and my androids. With a demon's contract, Lin Hao could instantly detect any activity in the real world no matter where he was in the multiverse. Zora was his remaining pair of eyes. He then used the power of transforming virtuality into reality to modify a computer in the apartment into a high-performance computer. This computer can serve as your home, but it's just a smokescreen to prevent anyone or a higher dimensional being from discovering you. Remember to play dumb. If you're discovered and can't escape, lure them here. I'll give you the android's self-destruct permissions. If anything unforeseen happens, destroy the android and immediately notify the little devil, who will come and take you back. Seeing his master's thoughtfulness and consideration for her, Zora was filled with gratitude and said, "Master, rest assured, I will carry out your orders perfectly." The android, disguised as Lin Hao, returned to Marvel Studios to continue his diligent work as a company slave. Perhaps the white man would be pleased and give him a promotion, giving him greater authority. Lin Hao didn't care. He just needed to keep this identity so he could easily modify the settings of his base universe and even other universes. By the time he had finished these things, Wade Wilson had returned with Zheng Xian. "I've already sent them to Wade's universe. I'm just waiting for you to return." "I'm done," Lin Hao nodded, then suddenly smiled. "Don't be surprised when you get back." "What have you done?" Zheng Xian, seeing his familiar smile, was taken aback. After a moment's thought, he waved his hand. "Never mind. It doesn't matter. Let's kill eternity first." After finishing up, Lin Hao and Zheng Xian approached Deadpool again. Wade, usually a nervous wreck, suddenly became serious, as if the virus had been deactivated and his brilliance was back in full force. "Did you manage to convince Marvel's editorial department this time? Did they agree to expel your universe? Or did you rebel against their plans?" Deadpool looked frivolous, but his intelligence was undeniable. Otherwise, he wouldn't have developed a rebellious spirit. When he first met Zheng Xian, he was quickly taken in by the old man. After some provocation, the outspoken Wade brought Zheng Xian to the real world to redeem himself, and then, after more than 2,000 years of life, he revealed the truth. Zheng Xian's initial actions and subsequent requests to bring him to the real world hadn't been in the public eye, so Wade had long understood what the old man was planning. This time, after bringing Lin Hao here for over 3 months, he suddenly beamed with joy, his entire demeanor completely different from his previous bitter and resentful demeanor. Wade had clearly guessed something. If you want to know, come with us. Lin Hao and Zheng Xian exchanged glances, their understanding clear. There was no sign of another She-Hulk capable of breaking the fourth wall, and Lin Hao, after checking the archived records in Marvel's warehouse, discovered that the She-Hulk TV series didn't exist in his own universe, 10,086, as the only show for currently capable of traveling between the multiverse and the real world. He had to keep the position in his own hands. They also believed that once those with a rebellious spirit realized the truth about being manipulated, they would never accept living in a universe influenced by Marvel's consciousness. Wade Wilson was a potential teammate. Wade was silent for a moment, then nodded. He then took Lin Hao and Zheng Xian back to his apartment, where several people were already waiting. "Let me introduce them," Zheng Xian said, warming up the atmosphere. He first approached a bald, white-bearded old man. "This is the Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One. You should recognize him." Sure enough, behind Zheng Xian stood an Ancient One from another universe. Zheng Xian then approached a slender young woman. "This is Ms. Wu Fengji. I've been searching for her for a long time." Then came a bald, middle-aged man. Dr. Chen Lu, from Lanzhou. Finally, 5 identical male twins. Tao Yuhen, Tao Yazhang, Tao Yulin, Tao Yusen, Tao Yu. They're 5 mutants. After introducing his teammates, Zheng Xian turned and solemnly introduced the others. "This is Lin Hao, Director of SHIE's Technical Development Department. He's the key figure in helping my universe escape Marvel's mind control." "Hello everyone," Lin Hao said with a smile, shaking hands with each of them. "Did you really do it?" Wu Fengji looked at Lin Hao with a scrutinizing gaze. Not only her, but everyone else also had a hint of doubt. "Why don't you go and see for yourself?" Lin Hao just smiled. Chapter 252, The 33 Heavenly Palaces on Mars. The Whitebeard version of the Ancient One goes without saying, a powerful figure within the multiverse. Unlike the old Nun version, who was merely a tool for passing on his abilities, this Ancient One is the true Sorcerer Supreme, capable of overwhelming multidimensional demonic gods. Wu Fengji, possessing the powers of both Dragon and Phoenix, once shattered a phoenix with her bare hands, arguably the most powerful Iron Fist of the generation. Chen Lu, the Radiant Man, transformed himself through physics experiments into a Radiant Man, possessing the ability to absorb and release radiation, as well as super strength, force field control, electromagnetic pulses, and self-destruct abilities. 5 twins, united as the Million Man, not only combine the powers of the 5 brothers but also sense the energy of all Chinese people, drawing strength from them and enhancing their own attributes. In theory, the Million Man possesses the most powerful power. If he could combine the power of over 1 billion people, he would be the most powerful being in the Marvel Universe outside of the 4 abstract gods. Without the bloodlock cheat, he could surely shatter a mortal with a single punch. Perhaps realizing this was too outlandish, in the comics, he only sensed the power of 10,000 people, then shattered the shield of Captain America's American agent, who shared the same shield. Indeed, the combined power of 10,000 Chinese and 5 mutants barely shattered a vibranium shield. Greetings over, it's time to depart, Lin Hao solemnly warned everyone. "We'll resume our departure time, but don't get carried away. With the power of the single eternal, they'll surely set their sights on Earth, so be prepared to engage in battle with the single eternal the moment you arrive." The so-called real-world experiences a different flow of time than any other universe within the multiverse. This world isn't even within the multiverse's sacred timeline, so, while Lin Hao spent over 3 months in the real world, only a little over a day passed in Deadpool's world. The white-bearded Ancient One stepped forward first, producing his own time stone and setting time back a little over a day. The Infinity Stones are universal across the multiverse, as proven in Avengers 4, currently. They are only explicitly unusable within the Time Variance Administration, where they transform into broken stones that can't even emit light. Although Lin Hao possessed the power of time, the tool the blue fat man used to travel through time and space was a time machine, not a time bag. Therefore, Lin Hao's power of time could only be used on specific objects and could not travel through time and space. Even if you were outside the universe and wanted to return the entire universe to its previous state, it wouldn't be considered time travel. Thus, the time of Deadpool's world was rewound. Whether or not the Sorcerer Supreme of this universe would discover it was none of Lin Hao's and his companions' concern. Wade Wilson had already decided to go with him. Then, Ancient One attempted to open the portal, but discovered that the coordinates of the base universe were no longer available. He cast a startled glance at Lin Hao. Base universe is a new name I gave it. I've added a barrier around it to provide invisibility. As he spoke, Lin Hao suddenly raised his hand and swiftly opened an air gate. Hurry! Eternity must have noticed something was wrong. The group filed into the villa on the outskirts of Beijing. Upon entering this universe, several powerful Chinese warriors from other universes were startled. They had already felt the freedom of shackles gone. It's actually real. Ancient One, Wu Fengji, Chen Lu, and the Tao brothers all erupted in joy, feeling the urge to shout. Wade Wilson, newly arrived, felt the same urge, but he managed to stay calm, swaying his body constantly, tears welling up in his eyes beneath his mask. Hurry, Lin Hao shouted. Odin was waiting, holding the space stone. He had secretly taken the stone from the SHIELD warehouse, effectively returning it to its rightful owner. Let's go to Mars, don't leave the battlefield on Earth, Lin Hao shouted, leading the charge. A space portal had opened beside Odin, connecting to Mars. Kamar Taj's portal still functioned within the base universe, and Lin Hao hadn't changed this setting. But every second after returning was crucial, so Lin Hao had arranged for Odin to wait there, holding the space stone. Initially, Wan's Hongsha and Radioactive Man were worried about their survival on Mars. After all, unlike Wu Fengji, who possessed the power of dragons and phoenixes, or the multiverse powerhouse Ancient One, they lacked the ability to survive in outer space. While they could outlast ordinary humans, they certainly couldn't fight properly. However, upon exiting the space portal, they found themselves not on the desolate Martian surface, but rather before a towering palace complex. Thousands of golden rays swirled crimson, and auspicious auras emanated purple mist. The ridges of one palace swallowed golden beasts, while the pillars of another hall were lined with jade killins. Several large pillars lined the inner walls, entwined with the golden-scaled, sun-dazzling red-bearded dragons. Several long bridges, upon which swirled red-crowned phoenixes with colorful feathers. Golden palaces, silver thrones, and purple palaces, amidst glittering flowers and jade blossoms. A brilliant haze illuminated the sky, while a shrouded azure mist obscured the entrance. Looking up, they saw the south gate of heaven, a deep emerald green, wrought from glazed glass, shimmering with precious jade. Indeed, Lin Hao had directly copied the description of the heavenly palace in Journey to the West and constructed a deserted celestial palace on the barren planet of Mars. This palace is divided into 33 levels, from bottom to top, each corresponding to palace: the Kayanayan Palace, the Bishop Palace, the Wuming Palace, the Sun Palace, the Huil Palace, and so on. Each level, like Asgard, floats in the sky. Starting from the Nanshan Gate on the ground, each level rises 10,000 meters apart, with the highest palace seemingly floating like a satellite above Mars. Creating with the power of the divine pen requires a thorough understanding of the subject being created, so Lin Hao's creation of this celestial palace incorporates knowledge from various sources. Asgard's levitation principle and protective shield were derived from Odin's memories. The living dragon, needless to say, was something Lin Hao had already thoroughly understood. The living phoenix was essentially just a large peacock dyed a golden red. The red-crowned crane wasn't anything unusual. As the director of the technical development department, it made sense for him to have dissected a red-crowned crane carcass, right? The exotic flowers and plants were only a few species rarely seen on Earth, and the building materials were all materials known to Lin Hao in the universe. If that were all, this replica heavenly palace would be nothing more than a spectacle, meaningless beyond satisfying a whimsical taste. But when Lin Hao learned the true nature of spiritual energy from Jiang Ming, everything changed. Lin Hao had already implemented a spiritual energy resurgence feature in his base universe, but with one additional restriction: a cultivation method was required to harness this power. This prevented the universe's spiritual energy from spontaneously giving rise to powerful creatures. A mountain's height isn't crucial, but its presence is vital. With spiritual energy, this replica heavenly palace on Mars could eventually flourish, and even the deserted palace could be filled with immortals and gods. What's the big deal? No, the entire investiture of the gods would be revealed. Everyone was Chinese, and the moment they saw the palace complex before them, they immediately associated it with the legendary heavenly palace. While others suspected something was wrong with the universe itself, Zheng Xian quickly realized it. Is this what you meant by "don't be surprised"? This universe will be our home base from now on, so of course we need to adapt it to local conditions." Lin Hao was about to say a few more words, but he immediately turned around and put away his smile. "He's here." Chapter 253, Eternity Falls from the Altar. A 10-meter tall black figure appeared outside the Nanchaman gate on the Martian surface. Its face was blurred, its hands and feet adorned with a head. From the back of its forehead floated 3 branches, 1 horizontal and 2 vertical, forming a unique symbol. Within its black form, cosmic stars emanated a mysterious halo. Behind it lay Earth, apparently having visited it first and then, upon noticing the movement on Mars, immediately arrived. Judging by the timing, only seconds had passed since Lin Hao altered the settings of the base universe. Single Eternity was alarmed upon discovering the loss of connection with Multiverse Eternity and immediately began to examine the entire universe. Then, it discovered it had suddenly lost its omniscience and omnipotence. Normally, with a single thought, it could grasp every event in the universe. With the exception of Lin Hao, the unknown anomaly, all life and non-life in the universe would be within its grasp. However, this time, Lin Hao had broken its network, leaving Single Eternity to observe the world only with its own sensory organs. It hesitated for only a second before teleporting to Earth, the most unique planet in the universe. Barely a millisecond had passed, almost at the moment of losing his omniscience and omnipotence. The Single Eternal discovered he had acquired physical attributes. No longer an abstract concept, he had become a living, breathing being of flesh and blood. If a low-level consciousness like artificial intelligence had suddenly developed the concept of life, it might have desperately longed for a physical body so it could experience the wonders of the world. But Eternal didn't think so. He was already a transcendent god, accustomed to this sense of lofty, otherworldly presence. Moreover, with his omniscience and omnipotence, even if he desired to experience the realities of life, he could simply create a physical clone with a thought, experiencing the joys and sorrows of life in his stead. Eternal had never imagined he would one day find himself on Earth, touching the ground with his skin, sensing the world through touch, let alone being trapped within a physical body. This was not a blessing for him, but a disaster. As he lingered on Earth for a few seconds, he felt a mixture of surprise and confusion, sensing the changes. However, without his omniscience, it took him a while to process them. After a few seconds, he noticed no drastic changes on Earth. While England had a new magic school, magic already existed in the Marvel Universe, and without his omniscience, he couldn't instantly comprehend the nature of magic in other worlds. The same was true of the increased internal energy within the SHIE agents. This unfamiliar energy did surprise him, but he didn't have time to delve into it. Instead, the sudden surge of demonic energy within America caught his attention, and he immediately contacted his henchman, the old nun-like Ancient One, to question her about her slacking off. However, Lin Hao and the others had already taken advantage of this opportunity to travel through the portal opened by the Space Stone and arrive on Mars. This spatial fluctuation immediately drew Eternity's attention to Mars, where he spotted the 33rd-story spectacular building, and he instantly teleported there. Upon seeing Eternity arrive, Lin Hao, without a word, activated the protective formation covering the Heavenly Palace. It wasn't an Asgardian magic circle, but a mountain-protecting formation from Mount Shu. Mount Shu was originally created by the Celestial Emperor Fuxi to replace Fei Peng in suppressing the Well of Gods and Demons. It possesses a powerful mountain-protecting formation that not only keeps Mount Shu aloft but also protects against demonic attacks. As the recognized next-generation leader of Mount Shu, Jiang Ming inherited the responsibility of managing the mountain from his master early on. Besides practicing the various Shushen techniques, he was also responsible for maintaining this crucial mountain-protecting formation. Without a thorough understanding of the formation, how could one manage it? How could one repair it in the event of a malfunction? Lin Hao, having gained access to Jiang Ming's memories, directly added this formation to the Heavenly Palace. Powered entirely by spiritual energy, the formation not only offers a strong defense but also suppresses all spatial abilities within it. This is why Lin Hao didn't specifically remove the Single Eternal's spatial abilities. Removing its teleportation ability would indeed significantly slow the Single Eternal's arrival on Earth, but it would also make it difficult for Lin Hao and his team to locate it. The universe is vast. If they didn't prevent the Single Eternal from emerging on its own initiative, how could they find it? Since Lin Hao wasn't worried about losing, he naturally had to resolve the situation quickly, lest this old man, who had lived for who knows how many years, suddenly discover the problem and quietly go into hiding. As the mountain protection formation was activated, the single Eternal immediately realized that his teleportation ability had failed. Trying to analyze the cause, he discovered a strange energy around him that he could only sense but not utilize. Faced with a spiritual energy from the Eastern fantasy world, Eternal, having lost his omniscience and omnipotence, was at a loss. However, he immediately realized that he had found the right place and the right people. "Did you do this?" An ethereal, vague voice emanated from the black figures. It was impossible to distinguish between male and female, but it had an inescapable immersion. "Indeed," Lin Hao replied loudly. "I brought you here today for one reason, to kill you." His voice was imbued with magic, dispelling the influence of Eternal's voice. "Death means nothing to me." The ethereal voice was neither joyful nor sad, nor was there any anger. "I didn't have one before, but I do now," Lin Hao said with a smile. "I gave you a body, not a soul. Death won't take you after you die, but your consciousness will completely vanish." Marvel's four abstract gods, eternity, infinity, death, and oblivion, all exist across the multiverse. Eternity prefers to place a cell in every universe, transforming into a single eternity. While the other three also have clones, they don't cast as wide a net as eternity. Regardless of whether there were clones of the other three in the former 10,086 universe, Lin Hao has removed them from the camouflage universes, leaving only the most powerful single eternity. "You gave it to me." The ethereal voice seemed to fluctuate slightly. Having lost his omniscience, eternity couldn't see through Lin Hao, nor had he before, so there was no comparison. Besides astonishment, confusion reigned. "What nonsense! Beat him up!" Wu Fengji, impatient, suddenly unleashed the power of dragon and phoenix. A golden dragon and a red phoenix appeared out of thin air behind her, roaring and soaring into the sky. "I'll go first," he flashed before the 10-meter-tall black figure and unleashed a pair of glowing iron fists without hesitation. Silently, as if striking empty air, Zheng Xian, standing behind him, immediately looked at Lin Hao. "What's going on? Doesn't he already have a body?" "I felt the force field fluctuations." Ms. Wu's fist hit him, but his body automatically absorbed the force. By the time Chen Lu answered, he had already transforming into a bald, muscular man dressed in green. "That's because you're not strong enough." Wu Fengji, who was swinging her fist, heard this and once again channeled the power of the dragon and phoenix, unleashing a full force punch. Single eternity, which had previously shown no reaction, now raised its hand, easily blocking Wu Fengji's blow. "Why are you trying to kill me?" There was a hint of puzzlement in her voice, not an act, but genuine confusion. "According to human logic, there's no hatred between us. My duty is to protect the universe. Your protection is filled with arrogance and prejudice against us." Wu Fengji leaped up, sweeping her long leg across, kicking single eternity in the head. Chapter 254 Pride and Prejudice engraved in the bones. Pride and prejudice, eternal, the single entity, wasn't angry at this moment. He remained bewildered, puzzled, wondering why these earthlings, like his own children, would rebel against him, even trying to kill him. "They're all Chinese from Earth." Glancing again, Eternal thought he had found the truth. "Are you dissatisfied with being surpassed by the Westerners in the last few hundred years? But for the past 2,000 years, Chinese civilization has always been more advanced than the West. So they can't tolerate the current lag. Is it because of the disparity?" Eternal, not angry, wasn't hysterical. Instead, he acted like a wise man seeking the truth. "But wasn't this act of prejudging the answer a form of arrogance? Is this the truth you've found? Or is this the only answer you're willing to believe?" Lin Hao sneered. "In your eyes, the Chinese on Earth are just paranoids, lost in the glory of the past, refusing to face reality. Can't you see the progress the Chinese have made over the past few decades? Or are you deliberately ignoring it?" Yongheng was silent for a moment, then continued, "If that's the case, why do you want to kill me? I didn't cause the disparity. I didn't interfere with the course of history on Earth." He seemed oblivious to Wu Fengji's relentless attacks, or Chen Lu, who had rushed over to restrain him with a force field. He persisted in his search for answers. Perhaps having just fallen from the abstract concept of a deity to the living, breathing human, he was unaccustomed to human logic or the influence of human nature. Yongheng easily blocked all of Wu Fengji's attacks. No matter how much she channeled her dragon and phoenix power, no matter how powerful she was, no matter how fast she was, facing Yongheng was like a child clumsily wielding an inflatable plastic stick in front of a world champion. Perhaps sensing the slight, Or perhaps out of anger after a long and fruitless assault, Wu Fengji pointed at her small eyes, flat nose, and thick lips, and loudly challenged Yang Heng, "Do you think my appearance aligns with Chinese characteristics?" Turning, she pointed at the winged lizard dragon shimmering in the shadows of dragon power behind her and shouted, "Do you think that's a Chinese dragon?" Yang Heng was silent for a moment longer, as if contemplating it seriously, before finally uttering a counter-question, "Isn't it?" The 9 Chinese natives of Marvel were speechless. At this moment, they abandoned their last shreds of reluctance and hope, completely resolute in their violent resistance. Even the supposedly omniscient Yang Heng accepted these prejudices against Chinese people as inevitable truths, clearly becoming the unspoken rules of the universe. Is peaceful coexistence still possible? Is there still a need for dialogue? Is there still a need for explanation, persuasion, or assimilation? Arrogance and prejudice are ingrained in their bones. No matter how hard you lick their boots, how hard you try to assimilate into their system, you can't change their perception of you. Haha, they're just afraid of power, not virtue. Their values are fundamentally different from ours, Lin Hao sneered. There's no way to convince them with words. We can only beat them until they're afraid and submit. You said you don't know what true Chinese elements look like. Fine, I'll show you. With that, he made the little devil invisible, opened a light portal to the mysterious dimension, and summoned the dragons, Qilins, Zhengming, and Nuyuan inside. Master, XN boss, X7 boss, X2 Lin Hao pointed at Yang Heng and ordered, "Go all out. Kill him." All the humans and demons had signed contracts and couldn't resist Lin Hao's orders. Besides, the great demon king always treated his own people well. As for the fire Qilin in the farm, it wasn't one of his own to begin with. So, the dragons, Qilins, fox spirits, and the Shushan sword immortal charged Yang Heng, one of Marvel's 4 great gods. The dragons and Qilins' attacks were limited to fire-breathing and brutal charging. Besides showing Yang Heng the true nature of Eastern elements, they proved completely ineffective. 10,000 swords, Zhang Ming unleashed his ultimate move, shrouding himself in a dense web of long swords, each one seemingly incredibly real. Nuyuan, in turn, revealed her true form as a white fox, emanating a terrifying aura thanks to the immense demonic power bestowed by the 4-soul jade. Interestingly, the energy fluctuations emanating from this vixen were even more powerful than Wu Fengji's supposed dragon force. After all, Wu Fengji's dragon force was merely the Iron Fist force, originating from the longevity of Kunlun. While this dragon possessed immortality and lived for millions of years, this was merely a deceptive device. Throughout the history of Iron Fists, only Wu Fengji had managed to defeat a phoenix, while others had only managed to bully gang members. When Wu Fengji defeated the phoenix, she hadn't yet attained the Iron Fist force, relying on her own strength. Clearly, the Iron Fist was riding on Wu Fengji's coattails. Of course, the vixen was still far inferior to the phoenix force, which, in Marvel's case, pointed directly at chaos and possessed the power of creation. The sword shadow and the white fox finally stirred a wave of emotion in Yang Heng. It wasn't because their destructive power threatened him, but because the spiritual energy attached to them made him lose control, as if things were beyond his control. This unfamiliar energy existed on Earth, on Mars, and even in space. Unaware of the threat to his life, Yang Heng still considered himself a supreme god, believing he could handle anything. Until this moment, he hadn't taken Lin Hao and the others seriously, treating his Bichu to death as a naughty child's venting. It's our turn. 5 identical twin brothers suddenly formed a line, the back colliding forward, merging directly into the body of the brother in front, ultimately reducing the 5 to 1. Feeling the power of the fusion, once Huang Xia still felt it wasn't enough and turned his gaze to Zheng Xian. The 5 brothers' combined strength alone was no match for Wu Fengji, who possessed the power of dragon and phoenix. Even Wu Fengji's efforts were in vain, and even if the 5 brothers merged, it would be useless. Lin Hao authorized the old Taoist priest who had been following Zheng Xian to draw a circle with his hand, opening a portal to the Shenmiao Bureau's ring fortress. Another level 9 agent, the Shenmiao Bureau's deputy director, who was waiting in Zheng Xian's office, saw the scene and quickly grabbed the microphone. Attention all agents, the director and comrade Big Devil are fighting an enemy. They will soon use a certain ability to sense everyone and borrow your strength. Please do not resist. This will only make everyone feel slightly tired and will not cause any harm. For a moment, the entire Shenmeo Bureau was in an uproar. Does this ability exist? No one doubted the authenticity of the news. After all, It came from the internal channel of the director's office. Without Zheng Xian's nod, no one could use this channel to report to the entire bureau. Everyone was just curious. What enemy? Is it so powerful? Chapter 255, Shushan Swordsmanship vs. Single Eternity. After merging, the 5 Tao brothers, known as the Millions Warriors, quickly began to sense their Chinese compatriots on Earth. Almost instantly, they discovered a group of the most powerful individuals, all agents of the SHIEA. So many? So strong, the merged Tao brothers were stunned. They clearly sensed thousands of beings more powerful than the combined 5, with over 100 of them possessing auras so intense they put them to shame. Who, after all, was the true mutant? They felt they were more worthy of standing on this battlefield than they were. These were all members of the action team, both highly meritorious and talented. The Blood Bodhi had developed resistance to the drug, and each possessed an average of 50 or 60 years of cultivation. Combined with the 9 Yin Manual, the supreme Taoist internal energy, their combat power far surpassed even the more basic Millions Warriors, thanks to the bleeding sponsorship of the American capitalist, Lao Tai. True bleeding. Over 100 of them had even ingested a single dragon essence, placing them in the top tier of all Marvel superheroes. Beyond these individuals, the rest of the SHIEA agents were equally formidable, with tens of thousands already mastering the basics of internal energy. Simply by combining the powers of these individuals, Yuanchu Star felt he could crush the Eternal before him. Of course, this was merely an illusion brought on by a sudden surge in power. Ultimately, the 5 Tao brothers selected only the most powerful 10,000 or so agents as power banks, which was already their limit. As this power emerged within his body, Yuanchu Star stirred a gentle breeze around him, the current created by the surge of energy. Slightly bending his legs and pushing off the ground, he soared into the sky, lunging towards Eternal, who was currently defending against the attack of the Chinese elements. Lin Hao turned to glance and saw that the jade slabs outside the South Heavenly Gate had been crushed. Although this was only a replica of the Heavenly Palace, the building materials Lin Hao had chosen were all the strongest in the universe, sourced from interstellar resource materials provided by Odin. The power of over 10,000 powerful agents combined in one person was more than a simple addition, as quantitative change leads to qualitative change is also a scientific principle unspoken in the Marvel Universe. With a single blow, Yuanchu Star finally pushed the single Eternal back a step, marking the greatest achievement of anyone since the beginning of the war. In the previous battle, Wu Fengji, Chen Lu, Zheng Ming, Nu Yuan, and other demons had failed to repel Yonghen. Seeing this, Zheng Ming, who hadn't previously given his all, didn't dare slack off and immediately decided to unleash his ultimate attack. He had just promised his boss to give it his all, and now he hadn't even scratched the enemy. How would he react? Sword God, a phantom of the Sword God, 100 feet tall, suddenly appeared before Yonghen. Yonghen, who was only 10 meters tall, barely reached his feet. It must be said that the Eternal in Thor 4 wasn't as tall as the comic book version. Sensing the powerful, mysterious energy emanating from the Sword God's phantom, Yonghen had to take his time. Sky-splitting slash. Even after the Sword God appeared, Zhang Ming felt it wasn't enough. He directly channeled the Sword God's powerful spiritual energy into his palm, summoning a massive sword and slashing at Yonghen. A blow powerful enough to cleave the heavens finally forced Yonghen to dodge. Although unable to use special abilities to teleport, Yonghen's speed was undeniably fast, quickly closing the gap of dozens of kilometers. But he underestimated the range and lock-on speed of his spiritual sense, and he also wishfully assumed that the giant sword relied on the laws of physics, requiring physical contact to inflict damage. Unexpectedly, the Shushan school had no tradition of studying physics, and neither did its swordsmanship adhere to the laws of physics. The moon-worshipping sect leader painstakingly taught Li Xiaoyo geography, explaining that the earth is a sphere, only for the underachieving young man to shout, "Love is infinite," and lunge at him with his sword. Yonghen now felt a certain similarity to the moon-worshipping sect leader. Why? Even though they were dozens of kilometers apart, how could the sword still strike him? The giant gently slashed the sword, and a wound appeared on Yonghen's dark body, running from shoulder to abdomen. No blood flowed, only wisps of mysterious cosmic energy emanated. It worked. After a long period of fighting with no sign of success, Wu Fengji and Chen Lu had almost doubted their chances of defeating Yonghen. Now, seeing him injured, they felt a renewed confidence in their victory. And a new thought occurred to them. The powers these Marvel natives possess were, frankly, bestowed upon them by others. Be it the power of dragons and phoenixes or supernatural abilities, they were nothing but a heir to the once omniscient and omnipotent Eternal, the embodiment of cosmic consciousness. If their power came from the other side, how could they expect to defeat it? It was time to learn something new. Traditional Eastern elements were more reliable. Seeing his attack bear fruit, Zheng Ming breathed a sigh of relief, finally able to give his boss an explanation. While his spiritual energy was still fresh in his grasp, Zheng Ming flew towards the sword god's phantom, merging himself with it and driving it. The surging spiritual energy seemed to possess substance, and the sword god's phantom shone with a golden glow. Transform my body into the sword, and become one with the sword. Not only Zheng Ming's own spiritual energy, but also that of the heavenly palace's formation, was drawn in, drawing the forces of nature into the sword god's phantom. The 100-foot-tall phantom of the sword god continued to rise, shrinking and narrowing, transforming from a ethereal, handsome man into towering, mighty sword brimming with wielding sword energy. A sword Gao domain formed around the sword, enveloping Eternal within it. The spiritual energy emanating from the heavenly palace's formation transformed into the might of heaven and earth, locking onto its target. This strike was unavoidable. Heavenly sword, Zheng Ming, worthy of being one of the most gifted individuals in Shushan history, could simultaneously unleash two of Shushan's ultimate techniques, sword god and heavenly sword. The power was naturally extraordinary. The moment this giant sword, a fusion of man, sword, and god, pierced space and descended directly upon the locked Eternal. The sword pierced his chest, tearing a chasm from head to hip across his 10-meter-tall frame, cleaving him in two. After the powerful attack, Zheng Ming collapsed, and the giant white fox rushed forward to catch her husband as he fell from the sky. Is he dead? An exhausted Zheng Ming was deeply concerned about his own performance. After all, this was his first performance in front of his new boss, and it would determine his future treatment. Looks like he's not. Nu Yuan wasn't sure. Eternal, now sporting a new crack, didn't collapse as expected. He remained standing, his head erect, unaffected even by his split head. He even lowered his head as usual, seemingly examining himself. Mysterious energy, never before seen in the multiverse, he said, his tone still calm. Lin Hao, who had been watching the show, turned to Zheng Xian and Ancient One and asked, "Aren't you going to take action?" "If not, I'll take action." He had been giving his team members opportunities to perform. After all, it wasn't him who needed to rebuild his confidence. "Why are you looking at me?" Zheng Xian said matter-of-factly. "I'm just a civilian. I don't trust you, old man." "You're such a jerk." Lin Hao rolled his eyes. He then looked at Ancient One, who could only offer a sullen smile. "While I'm certainly not weak, everyone knows I'm Eternal's lackey. Eternal knows all my methods. The abilities of a single Eternal and multiple Eternals are identical, only their identities differ. He also understands the Ancient One's magic." The reality was harsh. Their powers were entirely derived from the Marvel Universe itself. No matter how many tricks Zheng Xian had hidden, they were useless against Eternal. He proposed this fight to show the team members that Eternal's arrogance was real, and to show them that the power Lin Hao brought could harm or even destroy Eternal, thereby building their resolve to resist. "Alright, since you don't want to perform anymore, then I'll take over." Lin Hao immediately activated Super Saiyan 4, his body enveloped in a red aura. Unfortunately, the little demon had brought back the skeletons of Zheng Ming and Nu Yuan. Just like Sadako, who had previously inhabited the black videotape, Lin Hao couldn't directly replicate Zheng Ming and Nu Yuan's abilities. He could only obtain spiritual energy seeds from their skeletons and access their memories through the demon contract. Although he had already seen the Shushan secret manual, time was short, and it was too late to learn it now. You can only use the power you have mastered before. Chapter 256. You said I can't be killed, so I can't be killed? A red aura enveloped Lin Hao, the pressure alone crushing the solid white jade floor outside the south heavenly gate. Zheng Xian and Gu Yi, who were nearby, quickly moved away. Eternal, examining the cracks in his body, attempting to analyze the unfamiliar energy of spiritual energy, suddenly sensed another unfamiliar and powerful energy. His gaze pierced through dozens of kilometers and settled on Lin Hao. Another, Eternal finally let out a hint of human emotion. The universe has become strange. Lin Hao, enveloped in the red aura, appeared before Eternal the next moment, striking the right side of his head with a fist. After enduring the ultimate blows of Heavenly Sword and Sword God, Eternal's entire body split from top to bottom. A single blow ripped through Eternal's black form, leaving countless galaxies on its surface seemingly exploding, emitting a dazzling burst of light. Eternal's body was sent flying, and Lin Hao teleported in. This wasn't a form of apparition, but the authority of the Heavenly Palace formation. As its creator and controller, Lin Hao naturally possessed supreme authority. While others couldn't teleport within the formation, he could. While others would be suppressed within the formation, Lin Hao was able to harness its power for his own benefit. Before Eternal even touched down, Lin Hao lunged at him again, continuously striking at him face to face. "How is it going? Do you feel like you're being bullied by a power-hungry Dirk?" Lin Hao struck first, striking at the face, and then destroying the heart. "Before, you used your power to manipulate others, but now it's your turn to be manipulated. Doesn't that feel good?" More and more spiderweb-like cracks appeared on Eternal's shattered body, and countless galaxies exploded like fireworks on his black space skin. Eternal attacked, attempting to block Lin Hao's attacks, but every time he moved, Lin Hao appeared in the opposite direction, completely preventing him from tracking his attacks. In his last battle with the bald old nun, Lin Hao, despite his immense strength, was utterly spun around by the opponent's special magic, leaving him exhausted. In Thor: Ragnarok, we see that Strange's special transformations are performed without any initial gestures, transforming them almost instantly, leaving Thor dizzy and vomiting before he could even finish his beer. It's clear that the Sorcerer Supreme doesn't need to cast a spell before shifting dimensions. With a single thought, the space he and others occupy is instantly transformed. This technique offers a significant advantage against purely physical opponents. No matter how powerful the attack, even one powerful enough to shatter the void, Ancient One can instantly leap to another dimension. Compared to other worlds' understanding of time and space, the Sorcerer Supreme in Marvel is clearly a master at manipulating time and space. After this battle, Lin Hao deeply envied this ability to manipulate his opponents, so when he added a protective formation to the replica Heavenly Palace, he incorporated a similar technique within the formation. With supreme authority, he could freely alter his position within the formation's radius, also with a single thought. The feeling of being able to attack others while others remain invisible is truly exhilarating only after experiencing it. More importantly, the energy driving the formation is spiritual energy. And no superpower or magic in the Marvel Universe can stop it. This is because Lin Hao established a condition that only those who possess a cultivation technique can utilize this energy. According to the scientific principles of the Marvel Universe, one must first encounter and discover something before studying and understanding it. Lin Hao directly disrupted the prerequisites for scientists outside his faction to study and understand spiritual energy. While being beaten, Yang Heng had been constantly trying to analyze this unfamiliar energy. This was his instinct, a side effect of his omniscience, or perhaps even his stubbornness. After all, he used to be able to know whatever he wanted, so the sudden loss of internet access was quite strange. However, this unfamiliar energy, spiritual energy, originated from a box outside the Marvel Universe. Even the creators of spiritual energy couldn't explain it clearly, let alone him, a so-called god created by humans. The one-sided beating continued. Yang Heng was a quick learner. After all, Lin Hao hadn't lowered his IQ. He quickly mastered Lin Hao's moves. Although he still couldn't figure out the direction of the next blow, he could clumsily respond. Although he had a human form, he wasn't a human body. He didn't have the same joints as humans. His hands and feet weren't restricted in movement like humans, allowing him to assume all sorts of unhuman postures. Gradually, Yang Heng was able to withstand Lin Hao's punches and kicks, and the passive situation was changing. But facing the relentless onslaught of Super Saiyan 4, Eternal's body cracked more and more, looking like a worn yet resilient porcelain vase, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. Yet these cracks seemed to have no effect on him. What the hell? I clearly gave him a body and physical attributes, and he can take the hits, so why can't he die, or even break? Lin Hao was puzzled. Eternal was now split in two from head to hip, his body riddled with cracks. Any normal life form would have been doomed long ago. Even a life form without vital points would inevitably suffer a loss of strength after sustaining such damage. Yet, Eternal responded to every blow with incredible force, showing no sign of weakening his energy or strength. Instead, familiar with Lin Hao's style, his attacks became increasingly smoother. Something's wrong. There must be something I'm not noticing. Lin Hao immediately recalled Marvel's design for Eternal. The manifestation of multiverse time, The collective consciousness of all life in the universe is the physical embodiment of the Marvel multiverse, time, space, life. Lin Hao grasped the key point and was immediately shocked. No way? Is eternity bound to these three elements of the universe? Sensing a momentary dislocation in the rhythm of Lin Hao's attack, eternity raised his dark head, his eyes hidden behind the galaxies seeming to cast a meaningful glance at Lin Hao. You seem to have discovered something. Until now, his emotions had not fluctuated drastically, not a trace of anger. He seemed somewhat fearless. To destroy you, do I have to destroy the entire universe? Lin Hao suddenly withdrew his hand and floated in front of eternity, his expression slightly grim. You finally discovered it? Eternity seemed to jump for joy, as if laughing. I thought you'd be impulsive for a while longer. You blew up the galaxies in my body. But you haven't yet transferred your power to the galaxies nurturing life. Stop. You can't kill me unless you want to destroy this entire universe. Lin Hao's face darkened. At this moment, he was extremely thankful that he hadn't used the magic pen to directly erase the single eternal. Otherwise, whether the base universe would disappear or not was still uncertain, and he wouldn't have discovered Eternal's special property. You said it can't be killed. Lin Hao suddenly thought of a solution and sneered. If it can't be killed here, then try it somewhere else. Working overtime today is driving me crazy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257, Destroying Single Eternity. Eternal had no idea what the culprit before him was planning, but he possessed complete confidence in his hidden nature. He was the physical embodiment of the universe, the collective consciousness of all life within it, bound to it from its very inception. In other words, he was this universe, and this universe was him. Within this universe, no, within the Marvel multiverse, the prerequisite for destroying a single eternal was the destruction of the corresponding universe. However, if I can shut down your network once, I can shut it down twice. With a sneer, Lin Hao immediately ordered Little Devil to secretly open a light portal behind Eternal that connected to the mysterious dimension. Once again, even Eternal could not see Little Devil. The moment the light portal appeared, Lin Hao pounced and kicked Eternal, who was about to react, into the mysterious dimension. Lin Hao then rushed inside and ordered Little Devil to close the portal immediately. Eternal and Lin Hao disappeared outside the ruined Nanshan Gate. The other spectators turned their attention to Jiang Ming and Nu Yuan, as they had just escaped from behind the light portal. Alright, trust our teammates. Zheng Xian quickly stepped forward, quelling the inquiries of the other, curious individuals. The others remained silent, clearly unsure of their intentions to pry into Lin Hao's personal secrets. Within the mysterious dimension, Eternal, having been kicked in, surveyed his surroundings, his emotions finally surging. Where is this? There can't be such a place in the multiverse. Here, he could not sense Earth 10,086 at all. Previously, he had discovered he could no longer sense other universes and had lost contact with a multiverse boss, yet at least he was still within his base. Now, he couldn't even sense the very foundations that bound him to him. I don't know. Lin Hao, for once, answered his enemy's question honestly. Unfortunately, the enemy was destined not to believe him. Who are you? Eternal finally looked Lin Hao in the eye and pressed him. Are you a Marvel editor from the real world? Is this another special plot twist? As the once omniscient and omnipotent supreme deity, Eternal was of course aware of the existence of the editorial department and the real world. However, like Deadpool, he believed the real world to be the true world. Obviously, even the so-called Marvel Supreme God couldn't break free from the box's containment. He was destined to be a mere creation, not a true deity. Since you know about the editorial department, are you willing to accept a fate predetermined by others? Lin Hao suddenly felt a twinge of curiosity. The more powerful one becomes, the more proud they become. While they may maintain a humble and cautious attitude in battle and in life, they are undoubtedly confident in their own strength, and this confidence breeds a sense of pride they themselves may not even recognize. Proud people only desire to control everything in their lives and absolutely cannot tolerate being manipulated by others, let alone living in a fate completely predetermined by others. Why not? Eternal unexpectedly asked. Cooperating with the editors to protect the operation of the universe is part of my job. Lin Hao laughed. I see. Your Majesty, why are you rebelling? Eternal was already the most powerful being in the Marvel Universe. Although he always acted politely and respectfully before the so-called living tribunal. He was simply imitating Superman, who volunteered to attend a hearing in the U.S. Congress, tying his own hands. The editing primarily served to highlight the importance of American judicial procedures and the power of the American state. Look, even the omnipotent Superman obediently came to the hearing, demonstrating the superiority of the American system. Even aliens have been swayed. Don't be ungrateful the next time you find someone like him. The omnipotent Eternal voluntarily submitted to the restrictions of the living tribunal, following the same pattern, demonstrating his willingness to accept the order and rules shaped by American values. This is the very image of American society's wide and expert propaganda. You don't need to know who I am. I've already said, today I'm only here to kill you. Lin Hao dodged and charged, continuing his torrent of attacks. Eternal fended for a moment, only to discover that the cracks in his body were widening. The cracks from head to hip were actually dividing his body, the two halves becoming uncoordinated and threatening to slip out of control. Seeing this, Lin Hao breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, his thinking was correct. This mysterious dimension didn't belong to the Marvel Universe. The attributes of the Supreme God were meaningless here, and it was impossible to connect with the universe to which he was bound. He could only survive on his own remaining energy. The attack intensified, golden dragon-shaped Kigan waves blasting towards eternity. The black form finally began to shed fragments. These fragments exploded violently upon landing, their intensity rivaling that of a star or even a galaxy. Lin Hao had no choice but to stay away, forcing himself to withstand the impact in his Super Saiyan 4 state. Although the battlefield had been chosen from the outset to be near the edge of the dark zone, the force of the explosion still destroyed the experimental area, breeding area, and storage area near the light gate. If he hadn't mastered the power of time, Lin Hao's savings of over a decade would have been completely lost. Fortunately, this space itself was incredibly solid. Even a massive explosion capable of destroying civilization wouldn't leave a single mark on the pristine floor. Whenever the explosion subsided, Lin Hao would teleport back, healing his wounds with the power of time, and continue his assault on eternity. Since all his belongings had been destroyed in the first explosion, Lin Hao felt free to abandon his ambitions and move forward wherever eternity was. It continued grinding and exploding until Lin Hao became a numb machine, endlessly repeating the process of teleporting, attacking, and teleporting away. Eternal's black body finally lost its human form, leaving only half a head, an arm, a thigh, and a chest. Miraculously, these parts continued to float, unaffected by gravity's influence. Tisk, tisk, how can you still be a god now? Lin Hao unconcealed his disdain. More like a ghost, it seems that the me of this universe is indeed doomed. Eternal remained hysterical, simply gazing at Lin Hao calmly. If this is a new story from the editor, I have nothing to say. But if it's not, the me of other universes, the me beyond the multiverse, once they discover you, they might come and ask why you did this. Not bad, you've finally learned how to threaten people. Lin Hao laughed. I gave you a body and physical properties because I hoped you would be a real living being. Otherwise, you wouldn't feel the thrill of revenge. I thought you'd keep pretending, but thankfully, you made me happy. The attacks continued, the explosions continued, until the final silence. There is one more chapter. I stayed up all night to finish it. You can read it tomorrow. Chapter 258 China in a Different Universe. After completely obliterating the last fragment of eternity, Lin Hao gazed at the now empty mysterious dimension, shaking his head and smiling bitterly. After countless explosions, all that had been accumulated over the past decade had vanished. It's a good thing I called all the life forms out beforehand. The mysterious dimension now looked much the same as when Lin Hao first entered it, barren and empty. Only the area covered by the light had grown larger as the little demon's frequent journeys through it. With a wave of his hand, Lin Hao harnessed the power of time to restore everything. Though the process was arduous, he ultimately defeated the single eternity in this universe. If it weren't for this mysterious dimension, independent of the Marvel Universe, if it weren't for the sufficient combat power of Super Saiyan 4 to knock fragments from eternity, if it weren't for the ability of Super Saiyan 4 to withstand the explosion, if it weren't for this missing condition, Lin Hao wouldn't have been able to defeat eternity today. I won after all. Lin Hao summoned the little demon, commanding him to open the light portal. Outside the light portal, humans, demons, and animals had been waiting for a day and a night. During this time, Zheng Xian even had the old Taoist priest open the portal and return to his office to handle some official business. He had long suspected that Lin Hao had some means of controlling the people he occasionally conjured up out of thin air. Otherwise, there was no reason why the mighty god king of Asgard could suddenly become his henchman. This control method must also have a corresponding communication method, as Asgard had no internet connection with Earth. Yet, Lin Hao could often summon Odin in an instant. As the king of spies, Zheng Xian easily gathered this information through observation. Seeing the calm expressions of Odin, Zheng Ming, and the others, he knew Lin Hao was fine. Since Lin Hao was fine, it must be eternity that was in trouble. What else was there to worry about? Zheng Xian's Chinese teammates from other universes were not as calm. They waited anxiously outside the ruined South Heaven Gate, not even bothering to go up and see the 33 Heavenly Palace. This battle with eternity was crucial. Not only did it determine whether the base universe could eliminate this critical threat, but it also offered a glimpse into whether they had any hope of defeating eternity in their respective universes and saving their own. With such a crucial matter hanging in the balance, how could they possibly calm down? Why is there no movement? Is this going to work? Wu Fengji seemed to be in a state of irritability. She hadn't slept all day and all night, not even a few moments of quiet. She would occasionally pull Zhang Ming and Yuan aside to ask questions, trying to confirm Lin Hao's safety and the outcome of the battle. Can you stop wandering around? Chen Lu was annoyed. I don't want to, but damn, they're coming out. The 5 Tao brothers had always served in the Chinese military in their own universe, and they had a serious military demeanor. The 5 brothers all looked up at the suddenly appearing portal of light. Lin Hao strode out, and facing the expectant gazes, he nodded solemnly. Yongheng is dead. Great. Wu Fengji was about to get excited, but a sudden thought occurred to her. Wait. How are you proving you're not Yongheng in disguise? Lin Hao gave her a sidelong glance, ignoring her. Boss, master, a group of humans, demons, dragons, and unicorns gathered around. With a connection of the devil's contract, they couldn't be mistaken. Zheng Xian, who had just crossed the portal, saw this and beamed with relief. Great. Eternal can be defeated. As always, Zheng Xian didn't ask for details of Lin Hao's battle with Eternal. This was a tacit understanding between them. Lin Hao walked to the ruins of the southern heavenly gate and, unleashing the power of time, restored the towering structure. Would you like to visit the Spear Bureau first? Lin Hao invited his Chinese teammates from other universes. You should have seen from the previous battle that your original power couldn't shake Eternal, and you pose no threat to the other gods either. Are you going to teach us something new, including Ancient One and Wu Fengji? All the Chinese teammates from other universes looked at him with anticipation. In the previous battles with Eternal, they had felt a deep sense of powerlessness. Despite pushing their abilities to the limit, they couldn't harm Eternal in the slightest. Ancient One didn't even feel the urge to attack, as Eternal held a natural hold over him. If this continued, wouldn't they have to rely on Lin Hao every time? From the perspective of personal pride or the team's healthy atmosphere, this isn't a good choice. A healthy team requires everyone to play their due role, not just be appended on someone's lap. Furthermore, while we're all Chinese, we reside in different universes. We can't rely solely on others for support without giving anything back. If this kind of relationship continues, problems will arise sooner or later. Self-improvement is the essence of the Chinese spirit. We must master new powers, powers from beyond the Marvel universe, powers that aren't eternally suppressed. Only then can we contribute effectively next time we fight a boss together. Of course, Lin Hao nodded in response. I can even eliminate your original powers. It's up to you. Get rid of this damn Iron Fist power, Wu Fengji said impatiently. Phoenix power is still useful, save it for now. Ever since Zheng Xian revealed the truth, the so-called dragon power had disgusted Wu Fengji. Every time she activated it, the winged lizard dragon phantom that appeared in the light curtain behind her looked like a foul-smelling pile of shit. I can give you a new kind of dragon power, Lin Hao thought for a moment, pointing to the 4 dragons left after 3 were killed by Yongheng, and explained to Wu Fengji, you can transform into a dragon body like them, freely switch between human body, dragon body and dragon human form, possess powerful physical strength and solid defense, and can also master the 4 attribute attacks of water, fire, wind and thunder. Really? Wu Fengji's eyes lit up, and she couldn't wait to say, give it to me quickly. Back then, the divine dragon at the Jade Emperor's place was only a dozen meters long and looked like an earthworm, ugly as hell, but he still treasured it so much. When I learn how to transform, I will go back and slap it to death. Lin Hao was stunned and asked her, "What time is it over there? Didn't Zheng Xian tell you?" Wu Fengji replied, "In the late Qing dynasty, the heavenly palace was not closed. The so-called gods such as the Jade Emperor, Thunder God, and the 8 immortals were all there." Before she knew the truth, Wu Fengji had found these gods quite pleasing, especially when the Jade Emperor found her, sold by her mother, and had Thunder God teach her martial arts. Not only did he help her obtain the dragon power, he also helped her subdue the Phoenix, becoming the new Phoenix host. Now that she thought about it, those so-called Chinese gods weren't all awful, even quite a few aliens. The heavenly palace was utterly shabby, hiding in a cave. Compared to this fake heavenly palace before her, the ones she visited before were rotten as hell. Forget it, when I gain my new powers, I'll just not fight the Jade Emperor and Thunder God, but I'll beat up everyone else, Wu Fengji thought. Dr. Chen, what about you? Lin Hao looked at Chen Lu. In the early 1960s, just after the Sino-Indian War broke out, Asgardian Thor fought me and blew me back to China in a tornado, detonating the nuclear energy within me. Chen Lu's voice dropped. Clearly, his situation in his own universe was dire. If Zheng Xian hadn't secretly intervened, he would have been executed as a criminal. Lin Hao paused for a moment, then solemnly declared, "I'll restore you to your original form, and then you can learn anything you wish." "Thank you," Chen Lu said with heartfelt gratitude. He had taken to radiation because the Hulk in his own universe had once become enraged and threatened the nation. To gain the power to protect his homeland, Chen Lu attempted to replicate his superpowers, ultimately becoming Radioactive Man. However, the cost of radiation was too high, and there was the risk of a nuclear explosion. A new power was best. "I'd better continue studying magic. I'm old, and I can't compete with you young people," said the Ancient One with a smile. "Zheng Xian told me you have a completely different system of magic, and I'm very interested." "Yes, I'll give you the relevance books," Lin Hao nodded. "And I'll soon receive a complete set of powerful techniques." The Ancient One's universe is currently in the 1930s, the era of the Shenzhou landfall. "We 5 brothers still want to retain our individual abilities," the Tao brothers thought for a moment and said to Lin Hao, "We just need to learn new things. Our combined powers will be immune to eternity suppression and allow us to continue to sense the strength of our fellows. So, I'd like you to provide us with some things that increase group strength." "No problem. I'll give you a batch of super soldier serum and extremis virus, which have no side effects," Director Lin said with great wealth. "Also, it would be best if you could provide us with some technological support, both technical and equipment." The Tao brothers smiled wryly. "Our universe is in the early 1980s. You should know how difficult it is for the country at this time." "I understand," Lin Hao nodded, adding with a hint of sneer, "This is an era when even the air abroad is sweeter than at home." "Yes, so we can't just focus on becoming stronger ourselves," the Tao brothers sighed. "Only when our country is strong can we confidently respond to international threats and confront eternity, far away in the universe." "Leave it to me," Director Lin patted his chest and promised. These universes are not only their teammates' homelands, but also a great place for him to profit from them in the future. First, Super Saiyan 4's blast resistance is undoubtedly impressive. When Goku and one Star Dragon battled, a single wave could have destroyed planets and even galaxies, effectively destroying anyone with less defense. Secondly, the various universes mentioned in this chapter will later unfold their own plots. Don't worry, these plots are primarily based on the film and television series, with some comic book references added in. Given the wider reach of Marvel Studios, the focus remains on creating action. That's the main theme, and it won't change. Chapter 259, The Old Nunguyi's Last Dignity. For all the beings in the base universe, only 24 hours had passed, less than 25. They had no idea that the most powerful god in the universe had quietly fallen, much less that their own universe had undergone fundamental changes. Only the most powerful beings in the universe could feel an inexplicable sense of relief, like a patch of dead skin suddenly falling off. They were somewhat elated, but not exactly thrilled. After all, only the old nun, Ancient One, knew what had happened. Ancient One's soul, sealed in a chair by binding path number 99, remained in Zheng Xian's lounge. Her body, saturated with black from head to toe by the power of the dark dimension, lay in a nearby freezer. When eternity was kicked into the mysterious dimension connected to the little demon by Lin Hao, Ancient One's soul suddenly opened its eyes, unable to conceal its shock. They actually did it. Ever since she had guessed Lin Hao and Zheng Xian's true goal, she had never believed they could succeed, because eternity was simply impossible to kill. Indeed, within the Marvel Universe, unless the editors wanted to kill off a particular Eternal or destroy a universe, there was no way to harm the Eternals. It seems my life has come to an end, the old nun, the Ancient One, realized clearly. Zheng Xian and Lin Hao were not soft-hearted. They had previously refrained from killing her out of fear of alarming the Eternals. Now that the Eternals were dead, her existence was unnecessary. What she possessed, the Ancient Ones of other universes possessed better. The old nun was worthless. You guessed right, Zheng Xian said as he entered his lounge, followed by the old Taoist priest and the white-bearded Ancient One, whose true name had yet to be revealed. Hello, Master Ancient One, the old nun, with only one eye visible, glanced at the white-bearded Ancient One, a last-ditch effort to maintain her dignity. This wasn't their first encounter. The Sorcerer Supreme, who possessed the Time Stone and could communicate with the multiverse, often encountered his counterparts from other universes. The Ancient One was merely the most common of the various versions of the Sorcerer Supreme. Baron Mordo, Stephen Strange, and Wong had also held the position in various universes. Master Ancient One, I'm here to see you off for the last time, the white-bearded Ancient One said solemnly. There's no personal grudge between us, just differences of opinion. The old nun paused for a moment, then smiled. I understand. I'm just a tool. Marvel Comics portray the Ancient One as powerful, but in his 1961 debut, he was portrayed as an independent individual because of the intense rivalry between factions at the time. This was Marvel's political correctness. The more powerful the Ancient One, the happier Western readers were. Later, after the establishment of diplomatic ties between the two countries, and particularly after his visit to the United States in the 1980s to counter immense pressure from Russia, the two countries entered a honeymoon period. The character of the Ancient One became increasingly positive, shedding his earlier identity and becoming Marvel's most powerful and respectable Chinese character, attracting countless fans in China. However, when filming Doctor Strange in 2016, Marvel ultimately chose an old nun version of the Ancient One because the two countries were already in full-blown competition and it was impossible for them to promote us. Choosing Banana Man as a tool for passing on their skills, and then using the Blink incident to propel the weak king to power, both preserves the prestige of American heroes and provides a bit of psychological comfort to the sycophants, allowing them to continue to reap the domestic box office. The old nun version of the Ancient One is a complex and twisted creation. She has long foreseen her future. Let me do it. The white-bearded Ancient One stepped forward, donned the suspended ring, and waved his hands. Use the method of the Supreme Sorcerer's Nirvana. Magical waves surged over the Ancient One's soul, and golden light continuously devoured the old nun's soul, eventually completely consuming it. Her soul has returned to the soul gem, transformed into purest energy. Even gathering all 6 Infinity Stones cannot save her. Thank you, Zheng Xian said softly. After all, this was about asking the Ancient One to kill his alternate universe self, so he had to be mindful of his teammates' feelings. It's okay. Since I've decided to embark on this path, I won't tolerate softness, the white-bearded Ancient One replied solemnly. After all, if she were to remain, and if she found an opportunity to flee to another universe and lodge a complaint with Eternal, the base universe would be forced to embark on a decisive battle prematurely. However, the Chinese Resistance Alliance wasn't ready for a decisive battle just yet. With the old nun's influence eliminated, the entire base universe was free from any threat to the SHIE Bureau. Freed from the influence of Marvel's consciousness, Lin Hao could finally act with impunity. He first summoned Ivan Vanko's spirit and retrieved his original body, which had been preserved for over a year. This is a cultivation manual from the Ghost Realm. Lin Hao copied from a manual he had retrieved from among the demons and monsters and handed it to Ivan's spirit. In the world of Chinese Paladin, there is a Ghost Realm, and naturally, ghost cultivators. There are always those with exceptional talent who perish in accidents, leaving only a soul. Over countless years, in pursuit of immortality and the continuation of their pursuit of the Great Dao, ghost cultivators have gradually developed their own unique cultivation methods. Ivan Vanko has already signed a contract, so Lin Hao can safely hand over the manual to him. I don't ask you to rely on this transformation from yin to yang to achieve a ghostly immortal. You simply need to allow your soul to accommodate spiritual energy, reaching a state where it can freely enter and exit the body. Ivan Vanko's original body still exists, requiring no cloning. The only constraint preventing his resurrection is that his soul cannot return to the body. In the Marvel Universe, the magic of Camartage also allows the soul to leave the body, but this requires either mastery while still alive or the assistance of the master, and the body must be intact before it can be reinserted, as Strange and Banner did. Ivan Vanko's body has been healed, and he could have asked Ancient One Whitebeard to personally resurrect him. However, to avoid further stimulating the cosmic consciousness, Lin Hao opted to transform him into a spirit from the world of Bleach. Now that he has access to Eastern fantasy cultivation techniques and the base universe has successfully escaped the influence of Marvel consciousness, the time has come to fulfill his promise. Thank you, Director Lin, Ivan Vanko quickly accepted. With his intelligence and having been in China for over a decade, he has long possessed a deep understanding of Eastern civilization, allowing him to gradually grasp these obscure techniques. When you're resurrected, you can seek revenge on Tony Stark. With Director Lin's current status and position, he'd lost interest in the little Iron Man. Originally, he'd simply used him as a shell to gain a foothold in the American power sector, but who knew he'd be so tactless as to release Ivan Vanko? No, just killing him would be too easy. Ivan Vanko shook his head, a cruel smile on his face. Doesn't he love America? Then I'll make him witness its demise. Haha, I'm not going to be the villain. I'll make him see America's elite eagles abandoning it. I'll make him see the American spirit he's so proud of is vulnerable. I'll make him understand that it's this so-called American spirit that destroyed his beloved America. Clearly, over the past year or so, Ivan Vanko's hatred for Tony Stark has transformed from initial hysteria to current rational restraint, and his brilliant mind has devised many clever ways to torment his enemy. Chapter 260 Mars has belonged to China since ancient times. After 2 months of absences thanks to Wu Nana's Polyjuice potion, Director Lin finally returned to his loyal SWORD. Upon his return, Director Lin was called to a conference room for a high-level meeting of the World Security Council. This time, Director Lin had no excuse to slip away. Upon arriving, the other 4 deputy directors were already waiting. British Deputy Director Bernard Moore of MI6, the British, studied Lin Hao carefully and said with a smile, "For some reason, Director Lin feels a little different today than he did yesterday." Of course, Lin Hao replied casually, "Because I'm getting more handsome and younger every day." "Haha, I didn't realize Director Lin has such a sense of humor," said Tyler Hayward, the new American deputy director, with a polite smile. He replaced Valentina de La Fontaine, who had disappeared in the nuclear explosion in Washington, D.C., as first deputy director of SWORD. His once gray hair had been dyed black, and his meticulous grooming couldn't hide the deep wrinkles on his face. Because Lin Hao was so young and never looked his age, the other deputy directors had to dress in a youthful style, fearing they would be seen as elderly by their superiors. If Lin Hao were just some gilded rich kid looking to gild his reputation, they would have ignored him. But he was a powerful figure with strong connections and a real sense of authority, so they had to pay him a serious look. "Excuse me, I never joke, I only speak the truth," Lin Hao retorted seriously, taking his seat. The other 3 deputy directors were already accustomed to Director Lin's daily clashes with the Americans, so after exchanging pleasantries, they waited. 10 seconds later, 5 virtual figures appeared at the conference table. They were representatives from various countries on the World Security Council. Notably, Alexander Pierce had finally been promoted from minister to plenipotentiary representative of the United States. Director Lin immediately had 3 votes. "I'm calling everyone for this meeting today because a NASA satellite has discovered something strange on Mars." The Pierce clone, the initiator of the meeting, spoke first. The real Alexander Pierce had long since transformed into Fire Kirin, having been casually killed by Yang Heng yesterday. As he finished speaking, a large number of projected photos appeared before all the attendees. The clarity was acceptable, considering the Americans had begun exploring Mars many years ago and possessed a wealth of technological expertise. As expected, the photos were all silhouetted against the 33 Heavenly Palace. Lin Hao had deliberately disabled the shielding effect of the formation, aiming for detection by the nations on Earth. He no longer needed to act covertly, he could now conduct his actions openly. However, to maximize the harvest of resentment and prevent the nations of Earth in his base universe other than China from uniting, Lin Hao refrained from instigating a war for global unification. If a world war broke out, While there would be a wave of initial gains from the massive deaths, the remaining population would gradually become accustomed to the chaos, their nerves hardened or numb, and the continued resentment would be minimal. Furthermore, after unification, as the overlord, he would have to be careful about his manners and shoulder the burdens of other nations and peoples. Why bother? Continuing to tamper with the Americans and Japanese would be both profitable and fun. When the attendees saw the scenes depicted in the photos, they almost immediately cast their gazes towards the Chinese representatives and Lin Hao. What are you looking at? Lin Hao, as the nominal subordinate, had to maintain his family's dignity, so he took the initiative to play the good guy. This just proves one thing: Mars has been Chinese since ancient times. X8 aside from his own family, the other 8 attendees were speechless. They'd seen shameless people, but never someone so blatantly shameless. At least watch your table. Yes, this is the Celestial Palace from our myths and legends, the Chinese representative at the World Security Council headquarters declared with a resounding voice. Every detail is exactly as described in the myths. This proves that our Chinese ancestors landed on Mars, developed it, and left behind countless myths and legends countless years ago. X8 seeing these 2 Chinese people, one after another, trying to incorporate Mars into their territory, the representatives of other countries became restless. According to the Outer Space Treaty, no country may independently possess any space resources outside the Earth, naturally including the planets in the solar system and the corresponding resources on the planets. Pierce's clone spoke on behalf of America. I'm sorry, I remember that this treaty has no retroactive effect. Lin Hao spoke again. The Heavenly Palace on Mars has obviously existed for countless years, but it only appeared recently for some reason. Some of the countries present here may not have existed at that time. Treaties from decades ago cannot govern the Chinese ancestors thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. You say it's the Heavenly Palace, so it is the Heavenly Palace. Taylor Hayward played the role of America's white-faced man and refuted loudly. I can also say it's heaven. Tisk tisk, how brave you are. Lin Hao sneered. Just a friendly reminder, this world has heaven and God. Director Lin is right. British Deputy Director Bernard Moore seized on Lin Hao's words and counterattacked. Since Asgard in Norse mythology exists, then God may also be an alien, and the gods in Chinese legends may naturally be a group of aliens, since it involves aliens. It should be handled in accordance with a previous resolution and jointly developed by our 5 countries. That's right, no matter what the building on Mars is, it should be jointly developed by international forces. The Gallic representative stood up and spoke with a very firm tone. Humanity has explored Mars for years, finding nothing useful, essentially losing money. Now, a vast complex of buildings has suddenly appeared, all floating in the sky, a truly remarkable sight. If this truly is the Celestial Palace of Chinese mythology, does that mean it was once inhabited by immortals? Finding items used by immortals, even legendary elixirs, would be an irresistible allure for Earth's powerful. So, no matter what Lin Hao and the others say, the other 4 nations will never hand over ownership of the Martian complex to China alone. Even Russia's stance on this matter isn't entirely consistent with Nanny's. Alright, then, let's see how we perform. Lin Hao stood up angrily and walked away. The Chinese representative at the World Security Council meeting also left a meeting with a stern expression, clearly dissatisfied with the other 4 nations' predatory behavior. Upon returning to the office, Wu Nana approached and asked, "Director, what are you planning?" She had long held a stubborn belief in the Great Demon King and refused to believe Lin Hao would be so reckless as to reveal the Celestial Palace on Mars. That's right, she's convinced the Xiangong on Mars is Lin Hao's creation. She has no proof, relying solely on intuition and habit. Sister Wu, can you please have some normal expectations of me? The Great Devil expressed his injustice. Haha, don't tell me the Xiangong on Mars has nothing to do with you, Wu Nana sneered. You've been absent from work for 2 months, so you probably went to Mars to cause trouble, right? Lin Hao smiled but said nothing. Oh, Wu Nana suddenly realized, this Xiangong is like a bone in front of a dog, a carrot in front of a donkey, the bigger one is behind. Chapter 258 has been blocked, and even after revisions, it still hasn't been approved. I'll see if the editor can help during the day. If not, I'll have to wait 48 hours, which is really annoying. Chapter 261 The Magical Feat Ishinchi. Nishinari Ward, Osaka Castle, Toyo Island. This district boasts a thriving tourism industry. While Osaka, as a historic city in Toyo Island, attracts numerous visitors from around the world each year. The vast majority of visitors to Nishinari Ward are men. This is because Nishinari Ward boasts a magical place called Tabata Shinchi, a term that generates a massive number of searches on every search engine worldwide. Its popularity surpasses Osaka, and even surpasses any other famous tourist attraction in Toyo Island. This is all thanks to the energetic men of the city. Tabata Shinchi isn't a street, but the name of a neighborhood, one of Osaka Castle's most ancient districts. Hundreds of sex shops operate there, employing at least 1,000 people each night. To sustain so many shops, the sheer volume of customers is undeniable. The many teachers who exist in memory drives have given men around the world a unique identity with Toyo Island. But contrary to popular belief, the Oriental island nation didn't learn from the Dutch's advanced experience. Certain transactions became illegal after the arrival of the retired emperor, and they even enacted the prevention law in the 1950s, cracking down on them. However, people everywhere love to play by the rules. Any man who's been to Tokyo, unless accompanied by a woman, is undoubtedly curious about the numerous bubble baths dotted around the city. The same is true of Tabata Shinchi. After the prevention law was enacted, it could no longer operate under its original name, so the ingenious Orientals rebranded the area as the Tabata Shinchi Cuisine Association. Yes, all the Mama-san-run shops in this area have business licenses that say they're catering licenses. Everyone knows Japanese cuisine, shoes off, tatami mats for sitting or lying. Having a few attractive waitresses is perfectly justified, right? The waitresses are dressed in a variety of styles and designs, a perfect representation of the restaurant's professional service. So, is it perfectly normal for someone to make eye contact with a waiter during a meal, fall in love instantly, and then have the kind of passionate orgasm that happens in a passionate relationship? After all, Japanese private dining rooms are all about privacy. We don't know what goes on inside. The older brother finishes eating, then the younger one. The younger sister finishes eating, then the older one. Food, sex, and love are the most basic human desires. Even a sage could find no fault with them. Sometimes, a customer discovers a personality clash with our waiter and leaves, then suddenly craves our food and returns again. Regardless, after the meal, the customer pays. Isn't this a perfectly normal meal? Don't believe me? Just look at the lollipops in the customers' mouths or the snacks in their hands after they leave. That's proof they've already eaten. The woman who deliberately chose to enter this neighborhood at 9 p.m. didn't have a lollipop in her mouth, but no one bothered her because she used the magic trick to remain invisible. Even men on the street, even those reeking of alcohol, wouldn't rush over, they'd instinctively avoid her. Why did the boss ask me to choose this place specifically? To be honest, Nguyen felt a certain resentment. Although she was 539.5 years old, she was still a girl. It was just a manifestation of divine power. Could she find any place? Could she find Tokyo City? 1,000 miles to the east? She felt like the boss was deliberately teasing her. Miss Nguyen, you can't hold a grudge against the boss. She was accompanied by the spirits of 4 monsters, 2 in front and 2 behind, now transformed into maidens. Lin Hao had promised all the monsters that if they cooperated well, he would create a body for each of them, human or beast, based on their performance. Yes, the boss said there are other plans for the big city in the east, so we'll start here first, the maiden in the left back row said. You're so long-winded, Nguyen glared at them. She wasn't a good person. She had tricked Jiang Ning into a loop before, even causing a plague that plagued the entire village to lure him in. Finally, moved by the foolish Jiang Ming, they chose to die together for love. Follow the plan. Look for any scenes of forced prostitution. Nguyen set to work. As a seasoned demon, she'd visited human cities many times before, and was well versed in some of their evil deeds. She was no newbie who had just transformed. A place like this, no matter the era, is bound to have this kind of drama. With a wave of her hand, 4 demon-transformed maidens flew out, circling the entire Hibita Shinchi in a flash. Found it, I have one too, I have two. Soon, Nguyen shared the memories of the 4 demons. Finally, among the potential targets, she found a girl whose features bore a resemblance to hers. This girl's fate was about to change. Sadly, the other girls who were also assaulted would never know what they missed that night. Fate is so fickle, it defies all reason. The sign of the target restaurant, Red Sankey, inside the glass display window, in the open lobby on the ground floor, sat a young woman dressed in anime character costume, a star of the hottest anime heroines. With a smile that seemed to last forever, she sat in the glass display window displaying her wares, letting the men on the street comment on her. She was essentially a commodity. Beside this youthful and beautiful girl, beside a plate of snacks, was an enthusiastic Mama Sen, loudly soliciting customers. "Hey, come in and have a seat." Nu Yuan's target wasn't this indifferent girl. She walked into the restaurant on her own, to a door behind the stairs, and slipped in without alerting anyone. Such a phenomenon defied common sense of physics. Even Lin Hao, with his galaxy-destroying power, couldn't pull it off. Yet, it was merely a common tactic in Qimendunjia. The upstairs of the cookery was the main business area. The room behind the stairs was usually a small kitchen or utility room. Since a less than regular cookery naturally didn't need a dedicated warehouse to store supplies, it often became a temporary detention center. It was either a disobedient girl or a customer who dared to eat the king of chicken. As soon as Nguyen walked in, she saw a young girl with her hands and feet bound and a smelly rag stuffed in her mouth. She was wearing a sailor uniform, a common sight among Japanese students. A yakuza with tattoos all over his skin, half blonde and half green hair, and a spike in his nose, leaned against a counter and lit a cigarette, looking tired of fighting. Shida Kioi was already half conscious, the pain in her body and the overwhelming fear within her heart having shattered the meager willpower she had cultivated over 18 years. She had never imagined that the seemingly glamorous me who would bring her, who dreamed of becoming an idol, to an unregulated agency. What legitimate company would require interviewees to strip and take photos upon entering? As expected, after she was forced to put her fingerprints on a contract she hadn't even glanced at, the long-awaited yakuza brought her to Osaka, not to any training facility, but directly to the world-famous Tabata Shinchi. On the way there, she had already been interned by several people. Here, she would undergo years of in-depth training. An idol? In this neighborhood, she certainly had the potential to become a sought-after figure. If she could survive tonight. The story that follows can be simply described as I'm planting a sacred tree in Tokyo. It would be a shame to this auspicious location if hundreds of thousands of human cocoons weren't hung there. Will the Japanese, now that they've acquired extraordinary powers, turn against the Americans? P.S. I don't know what went wrong with Chapter 258. I've been revising it for a long time, but to no avail. Chapter 262, The Japanese Girl Who Vows to Fight Gambling and Drugs. In the backroom of a brothel, a young woman in a sailor suit lay on the ground, covered in wounds and nearly unconscious. Shida Kioi didn't know what she was clinging to. 4 years prior, she'd tasted the forbidden fruit with a classmate she'd fallen in love with, and on her way to Osaka, she'd been subjected to extensive lectures by several yakuza. Logically, she should have grown indifferent to such matters. It was simply one man becoming many men. Why resist? Resisting would kill you. Just like now. But she still refused to give in. "You stinking bitch, stop pretending to be a chaste heroine." The smoking yakuza exhaled a puff of smoke and sneered. "I've seen plenty of women like you. In the end, you still have to obey." His gang, responsible for supplying high-quality goods to Tabata Shinchi, scouted the surrounding areas of Osaka for girls who dreamed of becoming idols, and either coerced or pressured them into signing contracts, effectively turning them into commodities in this industry. If they perform well in the entertainment parlors, they'll be sent to small film studios to film. If they're lucky enough to achieve fame, their value will multiply, allowing them to continue working as receptionists at high-end hotels. From the moment they're thrown into the fire, whether voluntarily or forced, these girls are destined to become living money machines. Even serious film and television artists in Japan have their agencies take 9 out of every 10 yen they earn. As a result, many once famous celebrities on television actually only have a few 100 million yen in savings. This is why the Japanese entertainment industry is always plagued by celebrities who find themselves in dire straits after their success fades. This is true for even glamorous artists, let alone the girls who are thrust into the fire. If they can keep even 1 yen out of every 100 yen in profit, it's considered a good company benefit. Nishinari District still has many small gangs like this, acting merely as middlemen and taking a small commission. Don't underestimate these earnings. Almost every girl in Tabata Shinchi can squeeze out over 1 billion yen in profits. Even a small cut is enough to support dozens of surrounding gangs, large and small, and thousands of their followers. These people, like vampires, were sucking the girl's blood. Shida Kioi could no longer reply. Just as her hazy consciousness was about to fade into darkness, she suddenly heard a voice that struck her soul. Want revenge? Her consciousness was suddenly drawn into pure white space. How many people were there before her? She was wearing a luxurious crimson silk dress, embroidered with the gold outlines at the corners. She was tall and graceful, with a palm-sized, oval face that made one want to hold it in the palm of their hands at a glance. Her wide eyes shone with a captivating glint. Her long, black hair flowed like a waterfall, tied simply with a red string. Her slender, boneless body rested on an embroidered cushion, her delicate hand resting on her chin, a look of languid laziness. Her embroidered skirt split, revealing a pair of jade white legs. Her silky feet rested on the edge of a floating embroidered couch, swaying playfully. 4 delicate, jade-like maidens, each delicately carved from jade, carried the couch in front and behind. They didn't actually touch it, but rather, a white light enveloped the poles in the air. The voice came from the woman on the embroidered couch. Her gaze fell on Shida Kitoi, leaving the latter in a long state of astonishment. Boring. I thought I'd found a nice toy, but I didn't expect it to be such a fool. Shida Kitoi didn't understand what was being said, but she could roughly make out what sounded like Chinese. Your Majesty, this is a small country in the east. They've developed their own writing and language. You forgot to cast the spell. She probably won't understand. The girl in the front row followed the script. Trouble. The woman on the embroidered couch waved her hand, and a pink light entered Shida Kitioi's head. Little devil, do you want revenge? This time, the East Asian girl understood and finally reacted. Who are you, Daji, consort of King Zhou of Shuang? Nguyen spoke her lines according to the script. A small oriental nation has given me such an unpleasant name and has even listed me alongside a bunch of miscellaneous monsters as one of the 8 million gods. It's completely unbelievable. Tamamo no Mae-sama. Shida Kitioi's eyes widened, bewildered. Are you Tamamo no Mae-sama? I am the 9-tailed celestial fox, Lord of Kenkyu. Nguyen spoke with unwavering confidence. 9-tailed foxes are supreme beings among the fox clans in any world. In the original world of Chinese paladin, how could Nguyen, with only a few hundred years of practice, dare to pretend to be such a powerful figure? But now it was different. She had the boss's backing. Even if 9-tailed foxes from other worlds came in the future, they would have to wait in line behind her. She was the long-time employee. Stop calling me by your foul name. Nguyen blasted a stream of demonic energy at the Oriental girl, violently shaking her consciousness without injuring her. Now, it was Nguyen who, using a common fox illusion, had drawn the other's consciousness into a fantasy world. Everything Shida Kitoi saw was a fantasy. Of course, with Nguyen and the 4 old monsters' combined strength, recreating these illusions would be easy. Sir, forgive me, Shida Kitoi quickly admitted her mistake. As a middle school girl, she was like any other girl in the island nation. She barely attended school during junior high, spending her time absorbed in manga, dressing up, and idolizing celebrities. Fox demons are a common feature in Japanese girls' manga, and Tamamonami, the ancestor of fox demons, often appears. Suddenly encountering this magical scene, Shida Kitoi instantly cast herself as the manga's heroine. Was this her lucky day? Had her adventure finally arrived? From now on, she could also live a life of beating up green tea bitches, toying with rich and handsome men, and being embraced by handsome men? Nguyen, who had observed Shida Kitioi's thoughts through her illusion, suddenly felt a wave of disappointment. How could this girl be so incapable? Would choosing such a person hinder the boss's plans? Forget it, I'm already here. Nguyen had no choice but to decide to continue investing in this Oriental girl who swears to be mortal enemies with gambling and drugs. At worst, she could find another one later and treat it as overtime. Anyway, the boss's goal is only to make a big incident to attract the attention of the island authorities so that they can move on to the next step, and there is no requirement for the number of people. A rotten tree cannot be carved, although she decided to continue investing. Nguyen's attitude became a little colder. While talking in the illusion, Nguyen's real body had walked to Shida Kitoi, injected the chakra that Lin Hao passed to her into the Oriental girl's body, and at the same time used the illusion to instill the skills of chakra operation and steel fist into the other's brain. After finishing the job, she quietly left and continued to look for the second investment target. But as soon as Nguyen left, Shida Kitoi, who was lying on the ground, opened his eyes. I felt a sudden surge of miraculous energy within her, and recalling the memories that flooded her mind, she was so surprised that she couldn't help but exclaim, "It's real." What? The Yakuza, still halfway through his cigarette, saw the cock suddenly come to life and flew into a rage. "You bitch, you were just pretending, weren't you?" He grabbed Shidokioi by the collar, lifted her up, and punched her in the stomach. These goods were valuable, so they never hit someone in the face, and rarely used sharp weapons. They usually used fists or blunt instruments wrapped in towels to hit the abdomen or buttocks to avoid damaging the goods. However, this angry punch didn't hurt Shidokioi much. She subconsciously focused her miraculous energy on her abdomen. Finding it effective, she immediately focused her chakra in her hands, easily freed her bound hands behind her back, and then punched the Yakuza in the head. It was like a watermelon suddenly exploding. Chapter 263, Tabata Shinchi Murder Case. Growing up, Shidokioi rarely ate watermelon because it was expensive. The island nation's small land area and dense population kept agricultural and sideline product prices high. Watermelons were sold by the piece after cutting, while cucumbers, eggplants, and bitter melons were all sold by the root. One thing could be used for multiple purposes, so you could wash it and still eat it. But if you think island farmers can make a killing, you're wrong. The entire island nation's agricultural and sideline product supply has long been monopolized by the Agricultural Cooperative Union, and the purchase and sales prices have nothing to do with farmers. The huge profits are divided among the Jebel families and underworld organizations behind the Agricultural Cooperative Union, forcing farmers to sell their produce at the price they set to supermarkets and agricultural product processing factories controlled by the Agricultural Cooperative Union. Whether farmers or city dwellers, growing some for their own consumption is fine, but if they dare to sell it without the Agricultural Cooperative Union's approval, they'll be met with immediate complaints from cooperating underworld organizations. All imported agricultural and sideline products must also contact the Agricultural Cooperative Union and hand over a portion of their profits before entering the island market. Of course, there are distinctions. For example, when the American grain and fruit conglomerates entered the market, the agricultural cooperatives, stood pat. When China tried to enter, they even refused, forcing them to rent land in China for cultivation and then ship the finished products back home for high prices. By exploiting both sides, the agricultural cooperatives profited remarkably well, and the islanders had long since become accustomed to it. Across the ocean, the Koreans employed the same tactics. People always need fruits and vegetables for vitamins, and the more essential a resource is, the more likely it is to be monopolized. This is true from salt in ancient times to agricultural and sideline products today. In her 18 years, Shidokioi had only witnessed the spectacular spectacle of an entire watermelon being smashed once, and her heart ached then, tears and saliva flowing simultaneously. Now, she witnessed a similar scene again, but this time, only tears flowed. She felt nervousness, apprehension, fear, and a sudden surge of excitement. The headless Yakuza fell face down, and Shidokioi's feet landed on the ground, and with a gentle push, she freed herself from the restraints. After a moment of deep breathing, the Japanese girl suddenly began to cheer herself up. "Kaori, you can do it. You're the chosen protagonist now." After some mental preparation, she walked to the small kitchen next door and turned on the faucet to rinse the red and white stains from her face and clothes. Clean water, mixed with filth, flowed down the drain, as if washing away her past. The girl's pristine white school uniform was wet, revealing her skin. No matter how she washed, it remained imperfect. Finally, in a fit of rage, she violently ripped it open, revealing her large, white buns. To be the prey of a hunter's attention, one must have considerable assets. Shidokioori, newly captured and brought to Osaka, had no change of clothes. After venting her anger, she regained her composure. She was the chosen protagonist. So how could she appear on the street in such a state of disgrace? She pushed open the door and walked towards the front hall of the restaurant. As she emerged, the mama-san behind the glass display and the girl, the merchandise, all turned their heads. Meanwhile, the girl cosplaying as the manga heroine had taken her guests upstairs for dining. Another young woman, freshly finished, reapplied her makeup and returned to sit behind the window. The mama-san was stunned for a moment. Seeing Shidokioi topless, she assumed she'd surrendered, so she smiled and said, "I told you you'd obey. Why did you have to endure a beating? Your work clothes are upstairs. You're new here, so you need to pay a deposit." The mama-san stood up, intending to go upstairs to get her clothes. "But you definitely don't have any money. You can use tonight's wages." With a soft pop, Another watermelon exploded. Shida Kitoi, having murdered for the second time, had calmed down, but she waved her hands in annoyance, trying to shake off the filth on her hands. Please, I'll have to control my strength next time. She headed up the stairs, searching for clothes on the second floor. There were clothes on the second floor, and a room with a shower. The young woman behind the glass window covered her mouth with her hands in fear, momentarily stunned, unable to even scream. It wasn't until Shida Kitoi had already reached the second floor, and several dozen seconds had passed, that she finally realized what had happened. Murder, murder, the sharp, high-pitched scream seemed to shake the glass windows. It was peak traffic at Tabata Shinchi, and outside the restaurant, men from all over the world were milling around. Hearing the high-pitched screams, they turned and looked, seeing a headless body lying in a pool of blood and a large pile of scattered red and white objects. Oh my god, someone's dead. Call the police, oh my god. Take a picture and tweet, shit, good riddance. I wish more of those Japanese were dead. The men from different countries had different reactions, but to the disappointment of the tourists who called the police, the Japanese police officers in Nishinari Ward were surprisingly slow to react. An interesting fact, the police station in Osaka's Nishinari Ward is the only one in the island nation that is surrounded by a fence, over 4 meters high. Of all the police stations in the island nation, the Nishinari Ward police station is considered the least efficient. The police officers who work here are essentially hopeless, idling away their time. Why? Because of the Tabata Shinchi Cuisine Association. To protect this golden henhouse, the local Yakuza have formed a joint defense system to maintain daily law and order. Their primary focus is dealing with disobedient women and the occasional customer who eats the king of chicken. There's no such thing as malicious competition, as the hundreds of restaurants here are also monopolized by a few major Yakuza families. They're all owned by their own families, and the mamazan are merely employees. Locals understand the rules of the trade, and foreign tourists generally don't cause trouble in a foreign country. After all, this isn't a glamorous place. If the embassy intervenes, wouldn't it be known nationwide? That would be social demise. Therefore, unless they were drunk or the service is subpar, male tourists rarely cause trouble. Tabata Shinchi has always been safe. After all, it's a place to cool down. Tonight, a murder case suddenly broke out. Upon receiving the report, the Nishinari Ward police station's first reaction was to label it a drunken rioter. Instead, it was the nearby gang members who arrived first, as usual. Nishijima Yu is the leader of a gang in Tuchome, responsible for maintaining order in the area. The small gang he founded is a peripheral organization for the higher-level Yakuza. If a major incident reaches the Osaka authorities and someone needs to take the blame, he's the one to be thrown out. While it may seem miserable, Nishijima Yu's life is actually quite comfortable. With a small but substantial share of his profits, he's already accumulated billions of yen, enjoying a life of luxury and countless beautiful women. He doesn't have a wife, but he already has several children, all attending the most expensive private elementary schools. After all, being in the Yakuza doesn't lead to a bright future, so his children need to rise above the crowd. After graduation, they need to become lawyers or doctors, ideally running for a seat in parliament. That would be a truly transformed Nishijima family. Therefore, he happily fathers children, enjoying both the process and the outcome. I can afford it anyway, so opening a few more accounts always gives me a chance to succeed. What's going on? Nishijima Yu had his men separate the onlookers, walked over to take a look, and his brow furrowed. Did the troublemaker use a sledgehammer? That much force, the young woman in the window, still terrified, stammered incoherently, unable to describe herself for a long time. She's coming down, this one was clearly shouted, her voice sharp. To keep the subscriptions flowing for 24 hours, I've been creating grand scenes. Then, due to overtime, I'm running out of time to write. I have no time to consider the words, the style, or the details, making it a bit bland and hollow. Some of the exciting moments are brushed over without even being fully developed. So, I plan to write more in detail and enrich the plot on the future. Of course, this will inevitably lead to a decrease in subscriptions for the foreshadowing chapters. It's a dilemma. But I'm still trying to write well, not just a tedious, repetitive account of the action. I feel like that would lose more regular readers. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 Zinun is actually an authentic Chinese surname. Tabita Shenchi is that it attracts visitors from all over the world, making it a stage with enormous exposure. Tonight, Shida Kioi wasn't the only performer taking the stage. She had originally planned to transfer all her chakra to Shida Kioi, but upon seeing her great ambition, fearing she might ruin her boss's plans, Nyon decided to trouble herself and find 2 more sponsors. Then, 2 blocks away, in another basement, she witnessed a remarkable scene. Tied to a chair in the basement was a woman in her 30s, with an oval face, pear-shaped hips, and a voluptuous figure like a ripe peach. She wore a loose white shirt, jeans, and a pair of white sneakers. A knitted sunhood and crushed sunglasses lay on the floor nearby. Her attire resembled a normal tourist visiting Osaka. However, the words of a few yakuza revealed a different story to Nyon. Damn! This woman's actually an investigator. A blonde henchman pulled an ID from the woman. It featured a golden shield etched with a cherry blossom pattern. Boss Kurosaki, what should we do? What should we do? She's already seen something she shouldn't have, and you're still asking me what to do. Wearing a burgundy suit over a floral shirt, Kurosaki Taro angrily barked at the henchman. Do you want me to turn myself in tomorrow? But, the henchman panicked. The boss's words clearly implied a desire to silence him, but this was murdering a police officer. Except in places like Africa, South America, and Mexico, in all countries and regions with stable regimes around the world, murdering a police officer is a major crime. Once it occurs, the police system won't even give the judicial system a chance to intervene, and will simply close the case on the spot. Once the perpetrator is dead, the case is closed. This is because it's a provocation to a country's police system. Police officers can die accidentally, or inadvertently while on duty, but they cannot be deliberately murdered. Once such a thing happens, police officers across the country or region unite in hatred. The island nation is a place with a very clear hierarchy. As a member of the violent apparatus, even the most ordinary traffic officer would not tolerate being deliberately murdered. This would bring shame upon the Metropolitan Police Department's leaders. Even if the leaders are unhappy, the Yakuza families have to smile along, because they are top chaebols, the Chinese clan of ancient times. They simply forced a few young girls into prostitution, causing them to jump to their deaths. What a big deal. The boss can just step in and pay the Yakuza family, and with a little money, the impact will be resolved. Someone will go to the girls' homes and inform the families to accept the accidental deaths, otherwise they will also suffer accidents. Countless similar incidents have occurred in Tabata Shenchi over the years, and there has never been a major incident. Even if the investigators found evidence, what would it matter? Was it necessary to risk killing a police officer? Kurosaki Taro could surrender during the day and at most be imprisoned for a year or 2, and even be released on medical parole earlier. But Kurosaki Taro clearly didn't want to face such a consequence, because once he was imprisoned, his position would be taken by someone else. Small gangs like theirs, maintaining daily order in Tabata Shenchi and sourcing supplies for the restaurants, are unlike the perpetually dominant Yakuza families. Their stability is even less than that of the more established Yakuza, with established territories and businesses in other regions. The restaurants of Tabata Shenchi constantly need fresh blood, forcing the small gangs responsible for supply to maintain daily operations. A snake without a head cannot survive, its efficiency is bound to decline, making it easy for other gangs to replace it and completely withdraw from this golden henhouse. Therefore, neither the gangs themselves nor the Yakuza families, who control the upstream supply chain, will allow these suppliers to remain without a leader for long. Once Kurosaki Taro surrenders, a new leader will inevitably be elected. Upon his release, he'll be considered fortunate to receive the title of honorary president for retirement. This is no small loss. They'll lose at least hundreds of millions of yen in dividends annually. By having their henchmen take down the investigator, or perhaps acting together and joining forces, they have a good chance of suppressing the situation. Anyway, she looked casually dressed, not like she was on a formal mission. She didn't even have a companion by her side, which didn't meet the requirements for a formal police mission. Shinsuke, you've been with me for so many years, I've always considered you a confidant. Kimura Shinsuke suddenly held up his ID in front of Kurosaki Taro, pointed at the text, and said, "Boss, she's from Okinawa." Kurosaki Taro took it and looked at it, overjoyed. Haha, that's great. Call a refrigerated truck from the seafood store and have her transported to the fishing boat and sunk at sea. Yes, Kimura Shinsung immediately obeyed. His previous fear and hesitation completely disappeared. The reason for the drastic change in their attitudes was their identity as Okinawans. As everyone knows, Okinawa was just another name given to the Ryukyu Islands by the Japanese. The Ryukyu Islands had been a vassal state of China since ancient times until they were annexed by the Japanese in 1879. Although the eastern island nation has always promoted Okinawa as theirs, the people of the island still feel a strong sense of rejection towards Okinawans, and even do not consider them compatriots. Killing a local investigator would have serious consequences, immediately triggering a full-scale mobilization of the Osaka Prefectural Police. The Yakuza clans above them would even offer to assist in the investigation and, if found, the arrest, promoting a police-civilian cooperation model. These powerful local figures deeply value the stability and order of their territory. However, killing an Okinawa investigator would not cause much of a stir. At most, it would only cause the Okinawa Prefectural Police to fuss over the matter. Their influence in their homeland was limited, and they were even treated differently when on official business trips abroad, preventing them from receiving effective support from the Osaka Prefectural Police. Following the Battle of Okinawa in the latter stages of World War II, the Japanese, fearing that the Ryukyu people would use foreign powers to gain influence and seek independence or annexation from China, resorted to direct action, massacring 260,000 Ryukyu civilians on the island, half the total population at the time, in another tragic act. It's no wonder the Ryukyu people have always sought independence. Lin Hao suddenly imprinted his voice into Nguyen's consciousness, startling her. Old boss. Have you been watching secretly? Nguyen's will to survive was still strong, so she quickly changed her words. Lin Hao projected his smiling expression into Nguyen's consciousness, and said with a forced smile, give her all the chakra you have left, okay? Nguyen felt a distinct chill. After all, we were one family 1,000 years ago, so we should help each other, Lin Hao added, which seemed a bit superfluous. Really? Nguyen reacted quickly this time and quickly said, are this girl and the boss distant relatives? The trapped female investigator was named Aragakichi, but in fact it should be Linchi. She was from Okinawa, but her ancestral home 600 years ago was in Fujian. She came from the Fujian Lin family, and she and Lin Hao were from the same hometown in this life. In 1392, Zhu Yuanzhang, the first emperor of the Ming dynasty, saw the difficulties faced by Ryukyu envoys in sailing to China, so he specially granted 36 families with Fujian shipbuilding and navigation skills to immigrate to Ryukyu. The veritable records of the Ming Taizu clearly states, those who are literate were appointed as officials and chief historians to serve as officials in charge of tribute. Those who are skilled in navigation were appointed as interpreters to provide compass guides. The 36 clans once held great power in the Ryukyu Islands, even threatening the royal authority. The two sides fought for years, but it is undeniable that they did promote the development of feudal civilization in the Ryukyu Islands. After the Japanese invaders annexed the Ryukyu Islands, they not only forbade the use of the Ryukyuan language but also disbanded the 36 clans, which had maintained an independent existence for 500 years. They were forbidden from speaking the traditional Min dialect and were forced to desinicize themselves, adopting island names. In desperation, the ancestors of the 36 clans adopted double names, exploiting the Japanese's lack of education by giving them names that sounded very Japanese, even though they were all authentic Chinese names. Examples include Jiashan, Yijian, Jincheng, and Zinun. The Ryukyu Lin clan genealogy clearly states, the founding ancestor, Lin Zai, was originally from Linpu, Fujian County. During the Hongwu period of the Ming dynasty, he was ordered to migrate to Chongshan with 36 Fujian families to promote culture and education. His descendants have continued for over 20 generations, and besides the main clan name, Jiashan, other surnames include Yijian, Jincheng, and Aragaki. Get to work. Hurry. Lin Hao's voice faded away. Nguyen didn't dare to delay and quickly used the same method to drag Aragakichi into the illusion. Her true form stepped forward and injected her with all her remaining chakra. Both Tamamonami and the nine-tailed fox Taji were within the Ryukyu Aragaki clan's sphere of knowledge. The mature Aragakichi didn't consider herself the unique protagonist like a middle school girl. But she did need strength, the power to seek justice for her fellow clan members. With a bang, Aragakichi broke free. You, Kimura Shinsuke, who had just picked up his phone to notify the seafood restaurant to send a refrigerated truck, witnessed the sudden rupture of the ropes and the iron chair. "Wasn't there a girl named Aragaki Ryo that you tricked into coming here last month?" Chi Aragaki's tone was icy. Kimura Shinsuke began to say. But Chi Aragaki grabbed him by the neck with one hand and lifted him up. "You have 3 seconds." Chi Aragaki's other hand gently yanked Kimura Shinsuke's right arm off. 3, 2, feeling the increasing force on his neck, Kimura Shinsuke shuddered. Yes, that's right." Chi Aragaki's right hand gently twisted Kimura Shinsuke's neck, then tossed it aside. "What's going on? I told you to make a phone call, not to scream." Kurosaki Taro, who had just been out for a while, returned to the basement, carrying a large suitcase. This was their usual means of transportation, perfect for transporting young girls. He opened the basement door to reveal a pool of blood, the remains of Kimura Shinsuke's severed arm and body. Chi Aragaki, now free, leisurely picked up her sun hat and put it back on. As a police captain, she had combat experience, her reflexes were quicker than those of a middle school girl, and her mindset was more composed. After casually killing one man, she deftly dodged the splattered blood, not even a drop getting on her. Kurosaki Taro's reactions were even quicker than his men, quickly pulling a butterfly knife from his trouser pocket and squaring off against Chi Aragaki. "Come on, bitch. I'm not afraid." With a shattered plastic chair seat, Kurosaki Taro's chest pierced, cutting him off. "Don't worry, someone else will be there soon to accompany you." Chi Aragaki's chest burned with a fire she only wanted to vent. Step by step, she emerged from the basement like an Ashura shrouded in infernal flames. She didn't search each room, but simply leaped onto the roof of the cooking house by stomping on the wall, then leaped high. Turning point kick, chakra converged in her leg, and with a single kick, she destroyed the 3-story cooking house. Her wails were barely audible. 2 blocks away, outside the entrance of Sankey Restaurant, Shidaka Iyomi, freshly showered and dressed, threw a punch at the ground. Nishijimayu's body was split in 2 by the flying debris, one half tumbling into the rubble, the other half flying 5 meters away, his white intestines scattering among the onlookers, male tourists from various countries. The surrounding tourists suffered no better fate either. Those who couldn't run fast were struck by the flying debris, their lives unknown. As the earth shook, the path of change for the Eastern Island nation began. Chapter 265, Mold moves at the news. The nighttime streets, once a pink paradise, were now stained blood red. The streets, once filled with only shouts and laughter, were like a prehistoric beast, leaving only panic. Murder. Run, monster. That woman is a monster. Some ran, while others risked their lives to return and take photos and videos. The scene at Tabata Shinchi instantly went viral, sparking another wave of discussion. Hoha, finally not Washington, was likely the knee-jerk reaction of American netizens. Unexpectedly, someone immediately responded in the comments below, "Nonsense, because Washington has disappeared, another transcendent? Why are there so many transcendents in the world? Why can't I become one? Maybe it's because you're ugly. Haven't you seen that the transcendents in the news are always very good-looking? Transgender people in America can now work in government agencies. They can learn the skills of becoming a transcendent by simply signing up, and the government even pays them. Yeah, all you have to do is make a ruthless effort and cut it." As Lin Hao's incidents increased, the veil of the transcendent was lifted on Earth. Rumors of the exorcist sword technique had long been circulating online, but the requirement to personally transfer internal energy and have experienced mentors open up the meridians, coupled with a huge cost, kept most men away, so it didn't go viral. However, after dropping a mushroom bomb on Washington, the United States completely lifted its confidentiality restrictions. The consortium that temporarily took over government power recklessly strengthened its military, directly using major media outlets for propaganda, extending olive branches to the LGBT community and transgender people throughout the United States, and even openly recruiting transgender people worldwide. They no longer cared about international image or public opinion. They were eager to immediately establish a million-strong East Factory Brigade. Otherwise, they would be unable to cope with the endless paranormal incidents within their borders. While the exorcism sword technique had its limits, even ants in large numbers could still kill an elephant. Problems that could be solved with money were nothing to the American conglomerates, who printed their own money. Upon learning of the incident at Osaka Castle, the rebuilt American military leadership, now possessing a perverse obsession with paranormal individuals and forces, immediately summoned the U.S. military commander stationed in Japan and ordered him to immediately contact, recruit, or capture them. They had even dared to seek the flesh of a tiger before, let alone 2 humans? Upon receiving the call from mainland China, Yokota Air Base didn't even bother to notify the Prime Minister's office in Chiyoda, but instead ordered the Osaka Castle garrison to head for Nishinari Ward. Why would a father need to notify his son when he was picking up something from his home? And so, while Osaka prefectural police cars were still stuck in traffic, U.S. military helicopters stationed in Japan were already hovering over Nishinari Ward. After successively destroying several pre-scouted gang bases, Chi Aragaki's fury was vented and her rationality returned. Watching the attack helicopters approaching in the distant night sky, she quickly broke into a nearby house, found a modest set of clothes, changed, and quickly ran out of the block to join the fleeing crowd. As a police officer in Okinawa, she had experience in dealing with crises, but the other, a middle school girl, was still basking in the inflated feeling of sudden supernatural power, believing herself to be the all-powerful protagonist. Is she that stupid? Standing atop a high-rise building, Nyon maintained her illusion, watching Shida Kiyoi slaughtering the Yakuza with all her might from afar. She frowned and shook her head. Luckily, we've found another fellow from the boss' hometown. Should we act now? The old monster in the front row asked. The boss's plan requires that the benefits this time not be given to America. A rotten tree cannot be carved. Nyon felt her judgment was flawed. Her chosen investment target was a failure. As the monsters spoke, an attack helicopter flew over Shida Kiyoi. Hearing the roar of the propellers and feeling the sudden surge of wind, Shida Kiyoi, immersed in the thrill of slaughter, finally looked up and saw the very being that Japanese girls feared most. After the post-war economic recovery, Japanese people gradually regained their sense of shame. Women no longer considered it a matter of pride to provide services to the slutty soldiers for money. Japanese media even dared to report on the occasional incidents of slutty soldiers abusing young girls. Although no action was taken, they considered this a victory. Japanese parents with daughters taught them from the moment they reached puberty to stay away from areas frequented by slutty soldiers, especially those near military bases. While some girls still admired foreigners and sought to experience the depth of their sexuality, such acts of servitude were no longer considered a source of pride in society. Seeing the slutty soldier's helicopter suddenly approach, Shida Kiyoi instinctively took a few steps back, a reflex she had developed over the years. Only after she had done so did she suddenly realize that she was no longer the same person she once was. I'm chosen by the gods, and I must not bring shame upon them. It goes without saying that this girl, who could withstand beatings and refuse to yield, though possessed a certain naivety and arrogance, possessed a remarkable resilience, or perhaps rather stubborn character. Once she made up her mind, nothing could change it. Just as she refused to accept the fate of returning home and marrying an older man, she resolutely followed her good sister into the idle world. Even when faced with the raised guns of the mold soldiers, Shida Kiyoi did not flinch. "Miss, please come with me." The captain in charge maintained basic courtesy and a distance. The higher-ups' message was to win them over first, and if that didn't work, then capture them. As the saying goes, no country would refuse to attract a transcendent with a little money. Unfortunately, the smile of the Japanese-speaking mold captain made Shida Kiyoi look like a creepy uncle luring a little girl to see goldfish. Since childhood, her mother had always warned her to be wary of the mold soldiers' smiles and lollipops. So, before they even began, the negotiations broke down. Shida Kiyoi subconsciously focused his chakra on his feet, pushing off the ground with immense force to generate a powerful recoil. He charged forward, then raised his fist. Super strength punch. With a puff, Shida Kiyoi, driven by sheer speed and immense force, pierced through the body of the moldy captain before him, smashing his chest and abdomen into shattered pieces. The moldy captain's neck and head remained in their original positions, his last thought a blur. What had happened? As he lowered his gaze, he saw his suddenly empty chest and abdomen, his legs standing alone on the ground. Gravity pulled my head downward, and my consciousness sank into darkness. The soldiers nearby were stunned by the scene, frozen for a moment before turning around, rifles raised, to look for help. These moldy stationed in Japan, used to lording it over the island nations of Asia, had never witnessed resistance from the Japanese, and their nerves had become numb. Compared to the troops stationed in Washington, D.C., their vigilance was simply not on the same level. I can't hold on any longer. I need to go to bed early tonight. As you can see from the last chapter's posting time, it was around 6 p.m. I didn't sleep at all last night. As I was writing, I came up with a better entry point and a supporting role, so I went looking for information to enhance everyone's sense of immersion. Later in the story, the Ryukyu people can keep it a secret. I only managed a 2-hour nap today, but now I'm exhausted. I'll continue writing tomorrow. Chapter 266 The Slow Reacting Japanese. A Jianan's explosive speed can break the speed of sound. Unlike internal energy, which requires gradual cultivation, chakra is an energy source that can be used immediately. Memories imbued into the brain through Jinjutsu also save the process of digestion and absorption. The invincible steel fists of a ninja, capable of killing twice as many cells as a normal earthling, are like a sledgehammer against a chicken when it comes to killing ordinary earthlings. A Chunyabaya girl, fearless as a newborn calf, believes she's become the protagonist of a manga, destined to be the hero who saves the world. After killing a moldy soldier who was about to capture her and humiliate her, she quickly pounced on 2 soldiers to her left. Her speed was so great that they couldn't even turn before they were crushed into 2 heaps of shredded flesh. Shit, the soldiers scrambled in panic, gaining distance and firing in the direction of Shidokyoi. The gunfire was chaotic, and the bullets were even more chaotic. They missed even the shadow of the Oriental girl, but instead injured their own people and the tourists who had been watching the excitement. Keep your distance, seek cover. After the captain's death, the lieutenant automatically assumed command of the battlefield, shouting, "George, turn on the radar, lock on her position, and fire rockets." The helicopter pilot, upon hearing the voice over the communication channel, quickly obeyed. Soldiers on the ground scattered, scrambling to the distance. The attack helicopter's radar, equipped with an advanced motion capture system, quickly tracked Shidokyui's trajectory. Automatically analyzing the impact point, the computer unleashed a barrage of 5 rockets, emptying 1 magazine. A series of loud booms erupted, and the shockwave destroyed the streets and buildings of Tabata Shinchi. A slender figure was thrown from the sea of flames, slamming heavily into a wall. "Hold the gun," the lieutenant ordered hurriedly. "Kent, James, switch to freezing bombs, and focus on capturing her alive." The Oriental girl lay on the ground, vomiting blood. The bombing finally shook her from her reverie. It turned out that her own strength was nothing. A few bombs could end her protagonist's fate. Comic books are all lies. With this thought, her consciousness became blurred again. This was the second time that night. The mold soldiers approached cautiously and found that the opponent had stopped struggling. They breathed a sigh of relief. Although several people died, they were finally able to capture the extraordinary person. Given the above-mentioned eager attitude towards extraordinary people, they should be able to get a lot of rewards this time. In fact, what they want most is extraordinary power. If they can use it to keep the target in the base in Japan for research, they may be able to enjoy the research benefits from being close to the water. With these distracting thoughts, the attention of all the mold soldiers was attracted by Shidokyoi on the ground. Suddenly, a dazzling white light flew down from the bright moon in the night sky, cutting through the night sky like a falling star. "Oh my god, what's that? Another extraordinary being here? Oh no, is Osaka going to become Washington? No way, why not? Have you forgotten this is an island nation in the east? The first place in the world to be planted with mushrooms, well-reasoned and convincing. Don't believe me? Run. All beings are equal under the mushroom balm." To say the Japanese colonists don't store nuclear warheads at their bases is simply unbelievable. Not to mention suppressing the Japanese, to guard against the 2 major powers to the west, the Japanese colonists would definitely stockpile arsenals at their island bases. The Americans are so crazy they'd even bomb their own capital, so why would they care about their sycophantic son's territory? A ball of white light floated above Fita Shinchi, revealing the illusion of dancing enchantments. That's right, an illusion. While the younger version of Fam Shengmei looked passable, she was clearly too far removed from the dancing enchantments and had to rely on the Fox clan's added illusionary powers. The panicked crowd suddenly stopped, an eerie silence descending. All the men and the women who had escaped the cooking house were drawn into the illusion, their faces awash with fascination and longing. The moldy soldiers were no exception. Those surrounding Shidokyoi dropped their weapons and stood still with perverted grins on their faces. The pilots of the 3 helicopters lost consciousness, and the helicopters, uncontrollable, lurched sideways, spun, and plummeted towards the nearby cooking house, exploding into 3 balls of flame. Strangest of all, None of those caught in the blast uttered a single scream, remaining captivated by the enchanting illusion. The floating Nyuan waved to the prone Shida Kitoi, who flew towards her. Both the man and the demon vanished in a flash. The Japanese are no longer the nuclear-promoting devils. Their reaction speed and courage are no match for the Americans. If Lin Hao, the referee, hadn't helped blow the whistle, they wouldn't even be able to eat their shit before they could even get a chance to achieve supernatural opportunities. The supernatural events at Tabata Shinchi and the news of the deployment of the fungal army finally alerted the Prime Minister's official residence in Chiyoda. Newly appointed Prime Minister Eiichi Higashiyama hurriedly convened a cabinet meeting to discuss countermeasures. However, only Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Gen Satoshi and Chief Cabinet Secretary Shuya Naganuma showed up. The all-important Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where they had the most impact, were absent. Glancing at the empty meeting room, Higashiyama felt angry but dared not. He had previously served in environmental protection departments. He was elected Prime Minister this time because the previous cabinet's mistakes had incurred public outrage. The Liberal Democratic Party needed an ambassador to redeem itself. Coupled with a growing environmental awareness both domestically and internationally, they specifically selected such an ambassador for their campaign. Anyway, the lifespan of the Japanese cabinet is short, and when the storm has passed, they can arrange a mass resignation, the Prime Minister will leave, and the other cabinet members can be retained. How big a deal is it? The Japanese have long been accustomed to it. Knowing his fate, Eiichi Toyama still wanted to do something. As soon as he heard about the extraordinary incident in Osaka, he immediately called a cabinet meeting to see what he could do, or what he could get from the fingers or even the asshole of the American father. Satoshi-kun, what do you think? Before Toyama Eiichi could finish his words, Otomo Rintaro, a secretary of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, pushed the door open and handed a tablet to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, the target person's information has been found. Rintaro, well done, Toyama Eiichi praised. Except for the young people, almost no old guys regarded him as the Prime Minister. Shida Kiyomi, 18 years old, from Akita City, Osaka Prefecture. After a quick glance at the information, Higashiyama Eiichi immediately reacted, quickly, send someone to protect her parents. At that moment, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Gen Satoshi, suddenly received a call. In front of the Prime Minister, he pulled out his flip phone and answered. After a moment, with a blank expression, he addressed Higashiyama Eiichi, Sir, the Kansai authorities have already taken her away, she's safe from the scoundrels. The names of the little devils all came from the film Japan Sings. Headley P.S. Guys, remember to bring your IDs when you go out today. If you're caught in a raid, immediately give your real names and pretend to be a boyfriend and girlfriend, and you might escape. Chapter 267 The Japanese Devils Who Have the Courage to Oppose the United States. The Japanese Kansai and Kanto regions were clearly divided politically, economically, and culturally. Kan means checkpoint, specifically the checkpoints that check travelers between the east and west of the island nation, Suzuka on the Takeda Road, Fuwa on the Hokuriku Road, and Eha on the Tazen Road. The area east of these checkpoints was called Kanto, and the area west of them was called Kansai. This designation originated in the 12th century, but later, the east-west demarcation was changed to the Osaka checkpoint between Kyoto and Otsu. Due to historical traditions, the island people maintain a clear distinction between Kansai people and Kanto people, while not a rift, an ambiguous sense of distance persists. Simply put, neither side looked down on the other. Kansai was once part of Kinki, so Kansai people considered themselves men at the foot of the imperial city and looked down on the country bumpkins of Kanto. Schools even refused to teach in the Kanto-accented Mandarin. However, in modern times, the island nation's economic and political center shifted eastward, with Tokyo becoming its largest metropolitan area and home to the largest population. As newly wealthy, the Kanto people looked down upon the Kansai people, who reveled in the illusion of their ancestors' wealth. This was true even among the common people, and the elite had distinct spheres of influence. In a nation as rigidly structured as this, the struggle between the Kanto nobles and the Kansai nobles had persisted for millennia. While the struggle persisted, daily disdain for each other lingered. Given this backdrop, how could anyone expect the Kansai people to relinquish the benefits they had already reaped? So, after hearing Rijogen's report, Toyama Eiichi's face darkened. He was about to take action, But the Kansai people simply snatched the bargaining chip away. No, they can't take this benefit. The Americans will soon get the news, Toyama Eiichi said, his voice etched in his mind. Our government has long been infiltrated by the Americans. What are you going to do, sir? Rijojin asked, his tone testing. He was over a decade older than Toyama Eiichi, having held important positions in several cabinets and previously served as prime minister. Ambitiously, he sought to lead the nation out of its plight and towards a resurgence. However, he realized that as long as the mold base clung to the nation like a cancerous sore, no matter how hard they tried, this goal was impossible. Having given up hope, he became a numbing employee, working steadily. We must reach her before the Americans do, to understand the source and nature of her supernatural powers. If we can't replicate her, we'll hand her over to the Americans to appease their wrath. If we can replicate her, we'll need to find a sufficiently secluded location to begin expanding our own supernatural powers. He said expand because the island nation also had transgender individuals. America had already made a business out of the exorcism sword technique, and he offered dissemination services to any country in need, thus building a network of public servants. Toyama Eiichi's conventional response disappointed Rijoshian somewhat, though he also understood that in the current situation in the island nation, harboring hope was simply a luxury. However, they hadn't anticipated the target's reappearance at the Iwasaki family's ancestral home. While the Iwasaki family may be unfamiliar to many, the Mitsubishi Group is undoubtedly familiar. Founded in Osaka in 1870 by Iwasaki Yutaro, the Mitsubishi Group grew over the decades into a vast conglomerate encompassing mining, heavy manufacturing, finance, shipping, real estate, and other sectors. After the war, the Americans demanded the dissolution of all Japanese conglomerates, allowing their own conglomerates to enter and seize the Japanese market. The Mitsubishi Group was forced to break up into 139 companies, and the Iwasaki family lost its former glory, retaining only a few of its assets. When it comes to hatred for the Americans, the Iwasaki family is undoubtedly one of the most resilient in Japan. While most of their assets have been taken over by their former partners, the Iwasaki family remains a formidable jebel in the island nation. Who is it? A young woman suddenly appeared in the traditional Japanese manner, prompting bodyguards to immediately surround her. I want to see your patriarch. Shida Kyo's wounds were rapidly healing. Jiang Ming and Yu Yuan's arrival not only granted Lin Hao spiritual power and numerous cultivation techniques, but also provided him with recipes for numerous elixirs from the world of Xianjian. After all, one of them was the designated leader of Shushan, and the other a fox spirit who had lived for centuries, possessing a wealth of knowledge about cultivation. Although many of the ingredients needed for these elixirs didn't exist in this world, Lin Hao concocted whatever was available, as the age of the ingredients was a simple matter for him. After rescuing the victim, Nu Yuan gave her a healing elixir and, following Lin Hao's instructions, dropped Shida Kyo off at the Iwasaki family estate, where she would meet the current patriarch. There was no other way. This tool was too incompetent, so he could only teach her step by step. Why not just let the nine-tailed fox take over? For prestige and credibility, a nine-tailed fox wouldn't just offer up the treasure without asking for it, right? It could also create a wonderful misunderstanding. However, after receiving a lesson, Shida Kyo also came to his senses and realized that although he was chosen by the gods, he was still very weak and needed time to grow. Kid, I don't care how you got in, just listen to me. Shut up. The bodyguard hadn't finished speaking when a man in a traditional robe walked quickly on the wooden corridor at the back. It was Iwasaki Kajiro, the butler of the Iwasaki family. Mr. Kajiro, the captain of the bodyguards was about to speak but stopped. You have nothing to do now, disperse. Iwasaki Kajiro waved his hand and said perfunctorily, this is an acquaintance of the master. The captain of the bodyguards looked at Shida Kyo again and wondered, I wonder if the master has changed his taste recently. Apart from being young, he doesn't even like this kind of beauty, so how could the master like her? After dismissing the bodyguards, Iwasaki Kajiro quickly approached Shida Kyo and bowed respectfully. Miss Shida, I didn't expect you to be here. As a butler of a large family, his abilities were no less than those of a large corporate CEO, and he was especially required to keep abreast of important domestic and international news for his master's reference. Although the Tabata Shinchi incident had only just occurred, he had already received news, obtained Shida Kyo's photograph, and thus her information. The distance had prevented the Iwasaki family from immediately apprehending the other party's parents, but this had now become a blessing in disguise. "Take me to see your head of the family." Shida Kyo remembered the nine-tailed fox's instructions. Besides, she also sought revenge on the mole that had injured her. "Follow me." Iwasaki Kojiro bowed, extending his left hand toward the main residence. Shida Kyo followed him, passing through the deserted corridors and taking a detour to the Iwasaki family's study. "I apologize for the detour. I couldn't let anyone know of your arrival," Iwasaki Kojiro explained. "What about the bodyguards?" "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." Iwasaki Kojiro pushed open the door to the master's study and used the phone in the study to call the master's bedroom. A few minutes later, Iwasaki Nagashi hurried into the study. The butler was waiting outside. Seeing the master's collar was disheveled, he hurried forward to straighten it. How many people knew about Miss Shida's arrival? The bodyguards in the front yard. Deal with them all. Iwasaki Nagashi's casual words determined the lives of nearly 100 people. Leave their families alone for now. Say they were on a business trip. We'll deal with them later. Knowing that the brothers were busy right now, they would see what happened tomorrow after the fun was over. Or they could vote later. Chapter 268 The Conditions for Immortality. Shida Kyo, who was waiting in the study, could not resist her curiosity and looked at the furnishings in the room. She found that it was not as magnificent as she had imagined, with glittering jewels and jade everywhere. The poor child had no idea that the cushion under her butt was enough to buy many large diamonds. Iwasaki Nagashi arranged the clothes he had hurriedly put on at the door of the study, took a deep breath, and pushed open the wooden door. "Hello, Miss Shida." He put his attitude very low. Although the Iwasaki family is the founder of the Mitsubishi Group, Iwasaki Nagashi's great-grandfather Iwasaki Yutaro was actually an underground Ronin, a countryman who had lost his samurai qualifications. Their family's samurai qualifications were not inherited from their ancestors, but were bought from a ruined samurai by Iwasaki Yutaro's ancestors with the wealth they had painstakingly saved for decades. When it came to Iwasaki Yutaro's grandfather, he was so poor that he had to sell his samurai qualifications. From then on, he was excluded from regular samurai and became an underground Ronin. After 3 generations of immense wealth, the family fortune was finally divided, leaving only a portion of the Iwasaki family. Nagashi Iwasaki's father had given him this name, hoping he would remember his great-grandfather's entrepreneurial spirit and one day restore the Iwasaki family's glory. With the arrival of a supernatural being, Nagashi Iwasaki immediately recognized this as a golden opportunity, and so he maintained a humble attitude. Of course, Shida Kyo's supernatural powers would ideally need to be replicable, otherwise they wouldn't even be able to use them openly, relegating them to a shadowy assassin. The 18-year-old, a middle school girl with no negotiation experience, used herself solely as a messenger. "The nine-tailed fox asked me to ask if you desire divinely granted power? Do you wish to use it to reclaim your family's former glory? Even if it means opposing the Americans." This was the first time Nagashi Iwasaki had encountered such a straightforward negotiation, but considering the other party's age, he felt relieved. "Does this require me and the Iwasaki family to pay anything?" There's no such thing as a free lunch, and the wily Iwasaki Nagashi certainly didn't believe in freebies. "A place where we can guarantee absolute control for half an hour, and the sacrifice of at least 100,000 people." Shida Kyo's condition stunned Iwasaki Nagashi. He instinctively wanted to throw this babbling charlatan out, but luckily he restrained himself. "A place where we can absolutely control for half an hour would be good, at least 100 square kilometers in area, and at least 10,000 meters in altitude," Shida Kyo added. Iwasaki Nagashi was about to throw him out again. He had just thought the location was easy, but now it seemed that spending money to trick 100,000 homeless people would be even easier. "The nine-tailed fox-sama asked me to tell you that if the conditions are met, the power you ultimately gain will not only be enough to destroy nations and armies, but also grant immortality." With that, Shida Kyo stood up and walked out of the study. Stunned, Iwasaki Nagashi watched her walk into the moonlight, finally drifting into the sky and disappearing. Minutes passed before he recovered from his shock. Instinctively, he grabbed the teacup and drank a cup of slightly cool tea. Finally, Iwasaki Nagashi regained his composure. The first thing is naturally suspicion. It is impossible for him to believe everything others say. "Kojiro, tell me everything that happened in Osaka." After going out to make arrangements for the backup plan, the butler Iwasaki Kojiro returned to the study of the master and waited respectfully. Okay, Iwasaki Kajiro walked in with a tablet and began to introduce the intelligence he had collected to the master. Some of the previous content was unremarkable. It was nothing more than a persecuted girl from the lower class suddenly gaining extraordinary power to counterattack and kill people. This kind of thing only happens in stories. It was not until he saw the mold soldiers dispatched and Nyon hypnotized the people in the entire block of Tabata Shinchi with a single illusion that Iwasaki Nagashi suddenly woke up. He was so busy listening to the scary conditions that he ignored the prepositioned subject mentioned twice by the little girl, Lord Nine-Tailed Fox. Nine-Tailed Fox, Iwasaki Nagashi was stunned. Could it be Tamamonami? Isn't that Taji, the consort of King Zhou of Shuang? Could she be a real person, still alive? Realizing this, Iwasaki Nagashi understood the significance of the phrase immortality and felt a sense of absurd reality. But he needed more evidence. Immediately contact everyone who was at Tabata Shinchi and carefully question them about their feelings, what they saw, and what they heard. While Nyon performed her magic, the street surveillance cameras remained active. Outsiders could only see the video footage of the fleeing crowd suddenly stopping and standing still, their faces fascinated. Most of the tourists and service personnel who had experienced the extraordinary events were apprehended by the Osaka Prefectural Police, who arrived shortly afterwards. They were taken to nearby hospitals under the guise of medical treatment, but in reality, many important figures were eager to understand what had happened to them. The surviving mold soldiers were no exception and were immediately recalled to base. The Osaka Prefectural Police not only did not dare to detain them, but actually provided them with a cart to drive back. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night, with countless people on the eastern island nation awaiting news. In the late hours of the night, Iwasaki Nagashi finally received definitive intelligence. A beautiful woman was seen. Iwasaki Nagashi wondered, then why would a woman be obsessed? Wait, if it's really the nine-tailed fox, Tamamonami, that makes sense. While the authenticity of the information wasn't fully verified, Iwasaki Nagashi couldn't ignore this rare opportunity. Immortality and the destruction of nations and armies, he wanted both. Should I take a gamble? Iwasaki Nagashi was torn. The sacrifice is easy, but what about the location? It's so large, and there are height requirements. No, it's impossible for one family to do it alone. Iwasaki Nagashi quickly realized. It's almost impossible to create such a commotion on home soil without alerting the mold. No wonder they demand absolute control for half an hour. Clearly, that half an hour is for preparation. He had assumed that Shitaka Iomi's conditions were necessary for the ritual sacrifice to the nine-tailed fox. After all, what happened to the Americans in Washington had spread across the globe, with official media outlets in many countries exposing the American shameful practice of gaining power through offering sacrifices to demonic gods. Indeed, the ringleader was a certain unnamed Eastern power. Furthermore, the I sect in Cleveland had previously held numerous sacrifices, many of them involving foreigners, and the news had already spread. Countries with a modicum of intelligence had already obtained detailed intelligence. According to American experience, the more sacrifices offered and the more grand the ritual, the greater the power gained. Could the mighty Tamamonami, a foremost yokai among the 8 million gods, be weaker than the octopus monster that descended on Washington? If the octopus monster could crush high-ranking U.S. government officials with a single blow, forcing them to drop a nuclear bomb on their own capital, it made sense that a millennia-old legend of the nine-tailed fox possessed the power to destroy nations and armies. In mythology, the nine-tailed fox had already annihilated armies of hundreds of thousands assembled by ancient daimyo. As he pondered this, Iwasaki Nagashi's mind grew increasingly active. He was undoubtedly tempted. The only remaining issue is how to implement it. The homeless are easy to deal with. It's nothing more than spending some money to cheat and deceive people. The Americans have already demonstrated success in this regard. There's no shortage of bankrupt homeless people in the island nation either. The key is the location. Brothers, take care of yourselves. Good night. Chapter 269 Okinawa is the best place for worship. A covert conspiracy unfolded among the high-ranking officials of the Oriental Island nation. Iwasaki Nagashi flew directly to the Sumitomo family estate to meet with their current head of the family. The day after the extraordinary incident at Tabata Shinchi, the head of the Mitsui family also arrived at noon. The four major conglomerates in the Oriental Island nation are Sumitomo, Mitsui, Mitsubishi, and the Fuji Group, which emerged only after the war. Sumitomo, Mitsui, and Mitsubishi were all forcibly broken up by the United States after the war. Although they have gradually revived since the 1950s, they have failed to regain many of their once important industries and have faced competition from rising powers. Furthermore, the Japanese are not without grudges, they simply admire the strong. When weak, they are subservient and humble, but once their power grows, they dare to challenge anyone. This perfectly demonstrates their fear of power over virtue. Immortality can bring about the downfall of armies and nations. After listening to Iwasaki Nagashi's story, Sumitomo Masake and Mitsui Hisachi's eyes were filled with greed and desire. They naturally already knew the details of the extraordinary events at Hideshinchi. Now, after hearing Iwasaki Nagashi's account, they knew the extraordinary being behind it was the legendary nine-tailed fox, Tamamonami, and they immediately recalled the descriptions from the island nation's legends. The nine-tailed fox wasn't considered a major monster in China, but in the island nation, it became one of the most powerful demons. Tamamonami had fought 3 battles against a large army of hundreds of thousands organized by the daimyo in Nasuno. First, he used earthquakes and floods to annihilate 135,000 men led by Kimitasuke and Miyurasuke. He then engaged a second force of 300,000, summoning lightning to instantly annihilate half of them, then summoning an army of undead to overwhelm their formation until Onmyoji and monks arrived to rescue them. Finally, Tamamonami engaged an army of 50 men, including Onmyoji, monks, and sorcerers, using poison gas to annihilate a large number of soldiers. The demon-slaying forces ultimately sacrificed 200,000 men, and the demon slayers exhausted their entire lives to unleash the magical arrows of Master Giantsun, annihilating Tamamonami. In all, over 600,000 soldiers perished at Tamamonami's hands. Had the Transcendent not chosen to sacrifice himself, the nine-tailed fox, a single demon, might have annihilated the island nation. The saying overthrowing the army and destroying the nation was true. Now it seems the legendary nine-tailed fox wasn't killed at all. She's lived for thousands of years, and her immortality is true. Earthquakes, floods, thunder, poison gas, those natural disasters, even modern armies have no effective defense against them. If these powers were acquired, expelling the mold from the land would be a simple task. Immortality and revenge, what else could be said? Let's do it. As Iwasaki Nagashi watched the solemn expressions on Sumitomo Masake and Mitsui Hisachi's faces gradually calm down, he knew the 2 old men had decided to join. The sacrifice is not difficult, the only problem is the location. Iwasaki Nagaoshi had obviously thought about it for a long time, and now he frowned and said, the little ghost who delivered the message mentioned the height requirement, which means it can't be placed underground. It is difficult to find such a large open area on the 4 mainland islands, and there is still half an hour of preparation time. It's really difficult to obtain extraordinary powers, that's normal. Think about the past thousands of years, which of the countless kings and nobles didn't want immortality? Sumitomo Masake agreed as he should. The emperors of China spent countless manpower and material resources, and didn't even seize the opportunity of immortality. Now we see real hope. What is this requirement? We can only go to a more remote island and try to finish it before the Americans arrive, Mitsui Hisachi suggested, but frowned. Islands with an area of more than 100 square kilometers basically have a large population. We must find a reasonable way to transfer people. Why transfer? Iwasaki Nagaoshi suddenly spoke, and asked seriously, aren't the more sacrifices the better? This, Mitsui Hisachi and Sumitomo Masake looked at their colleague who was a few years younger than them with astonishment. If we've gained the supernatural power to destroy armies and nations, why should we care about what others think? Iwasaki Nagashi's eyes flashed with enthusiasm. We are living gods, we just need to ensure sufficient offerings can be delivered quietly to the site of worship, and we can afford half an hour of preparation. From then on, everything will be a breeze. Mitsui Hisachi and Sumitomo Masake were silent for a moment, then the latter suddenly suggested, then let's choose Okinawa. Iwasaki Nagashi was stunned for a moment, then smiled. Okinawa is the most suitable site for the worship. Although they were all wealthy capitalists who didn't care about the lives of ordinary people, they didn't want to be branded as massacrers of their compatriots. As for Okinawa, not only did the islanders not consider them their compatriots, but the Okinawans themselves were constantly pursuing independence. Sacrificing Okinawans would restore the greatness of the Yamato people, a truly two-way struggle. Compared to sacrificing their own people, sacrificing Okinawans would carry less psychological weight. But Okinawa has a mold base with a large military presence, Mitsui Hisachi warned. Find an island far from the mold base. It depends on how quickly they react. If they arrive before the ritual is successful, at worst, they can come in and share in the spoils. The ritual has already begun, and they won't care about the lives of the Okinawans. If the mold is slow to discover, Iwasaki Nagashi sneered, haha, they can be sacrifices too. The three old men assumed that the conditions conveyed by the nine-tailed fox through Shidoku Iori were the same as those of the ice sex rituals. As soon as the ritual began, everyone present would benefit. Okay, then let's make it Okinawa, Mitsui Hisaichi finally agreed. The three island nations' major chaebols made their decision and immediately began implementing it. Like conglomerates worldwide, they also have pharmaceutical companies under their wing, investing vast sums annually in drug research and development, aiming to prolong their lives. Developing new drugs inevitably requires human testing. They've done this kind of thing countless times before, but in the past, to minimize the impact, the scale was small, allowing their own media to easily suppress it. This time, a larger number of people are needed, and with a long night and tight timeline, the action is inevitably going to be a bit larger. Fortunately, the three companies, working together, can mobilize resources far beyond the reach of a single entity. Naturally, the actions of the three companies cannot escape the watchful eyes of the Fuji Group and other emerging upstarts. They suspect that the veterans of the three companies are making a big move, but for the time being, they are unable to connect these events with the extraordinary events at Hideshinchi. They are unaware, but Lin Hao, the behind-the-scenes director, is fully aware. He has already ordered New England to transmit all footage of the three companies' conspiracy and the widespread collection of homeless people to another tool, Chiaragaki. Regardless of the country of origin, the bottom line of capitalists has never disappointed the Great Devil. Chapter 270, Kyung Village of the Chinese Descendants. Kyung Village, Naha, Okinawa. This village stands in stark contrast to the traditional styles of the Oriental Island nations and the Ryukyu Islands, for it was entirely formed and created by the Chinese people. When Zhu Yuanzhang relocated the 36 clans of Fujian to the Ryukyu Islands, they established a tang camp on a floating island outside Naha Harbor, later known as Kyung Village. The villagers spoke Chinese and wore hanfu, even refusing to shave their heads and change their clothing after the Qing invasion, making them even more Han Chinese than the Kong family of Shandong. The island's architecture is replete with Fujian's saddle walls, with exterior courtyard walls, screen walls at the gates, and stone lions on the roofs. The Spring Festival, a traditional Chinese festival, is held in high esteem by the people of Kyung Village, who still maintain customs such as setting off firecrackers, hanging Spring Festival couplets, exchanging New Year greetings, and handing out lucky money. During the Lantern Festival, the villagers worship their ancestors and the kitchen god, offering offerings such as fried tofu dregs and red bean porridge, while praying to the god for a good harvest. During Qingming Festival, people visit their ancestors' graves and burn paper money. During the Dragon Boat Festival, they make rice dumplings and race dragon boats. During the Zhonggin Festival, they worship their ancestors at home. These customs are no different from those of China. However, in modern times, China has been in turmoil. Furthermore, the Satsuma domain and the Meiji government successively occupied and annexed the Ryukyu Islands. After the First Sino-Japanese War, some Kyung Village residents fled to the Qing dynasty, and Kyung Village fell into complete decline. Living under the care of others, their lives at the mercy of others, they were forced to change their surnames and language. During World War II, the Japanese army carried out large-scale conscription, and many Kyung Village men were deployed overseas, where they found themselves on the battlefields of the confrontation between the US and Japan. The war inflicted heavy losses on Kyung Village, with many men killed. The massacres committed by the Japanese army in the Ryukyu Islands at the end of the war, in particular, led to a sharp decline in the population and the extermination of many families. However, the war did not break the will of the people of Kyung Village. Perhaps due to the inherent tenacity of the Chinese people, after the war, the people of Kyung Village rebuilt their homes and sought independence. However, the transport captain was unwilling to offend his Japanese second father, and even with the support of the American father, he dared not send additional troops to take over the Ryukyu Islands. Ultimately, recognizing our potential during the Peninsular War and determined to contain the emerging superpower, the United States signed a private treaty with the Japanese, returning the Ryukyu Islands to the Oriental Island nation. Thus, the people of Kyung Village missed their best opportunity to break free from Japanese rule. After leaving Osaka, Chiaragaki quickly returned to Okinawa. Because her trip to Osaka was entirely solo, the Osaka Prefectural Police were unaware of the presence of a female Okinawan investigator at Tabata Shinchi. While their reconstruction of the scene revealed numerous collapsed buildings and casualties far from Shida-Kiyo's location, they were unable to confirm the presence of another extraordinary being. Possessing proper identification, Chi Aragaki quickly left the Osaka Prefectural Police cordon. Upon returning to Okinawa, Chi Aragaki secretly monitored the Metropolitan Police Department's response to the Osaka incident and, the next day, requested leave to return to her hometown of Kyun Village. While many buildings in Kyun Village today still retain the Fujian architectural style, most are older structures. A growing number of young people are being assimilated into the Japanese island nation, a clear reflection of which can be seen in the increasing number of Japanese-style single-family houses in the village. Doors are often devoid of tables and chairs, and bedrooms are entirely covered in tatami mats. 20 or 30 years ago, the island nation was enjoying its heyday, boasting that land prices in Tokyo could buy the entire United States, and young people were proud to have moved east. While the island nation is now in decline, those already influenced by it are unlikely to change. Although Chi Aragaki was born during that era, by the time she grew up, the island nation had long since declined. She feels little sense of identification with the island nation, but to suggest she feels any sense of identity with a motherland she barely knows and has only visited a few times is wishful thinking. Although her grandfather forced her to learn Chinese as a child, she cannot speak Mandarin, and her pronunciation is entirely in the Fujian dialect. Chi Aragaki aligns more with the current Ryukyu elite's vision of establishing an independent Ryukyu kingdom. Uncle, Jin, I'm sorry I couldn't bring Ling back. At that moment, Chi Aragaki was at Ling's home. Facing two pairs of expectant eyes, she could only bow her head dejectedly. She had traveled to Osaka to rescue her niece from the same village, but alas, she was still too late. This wasn't her first time. Every year, one or two young girls from the village succumbed to the temptation and headed north to the big cities, hoping to make a fortune. They did so to meet their ever-increasing expenses, but also with a simple desire to earn enough to support their parents. Sadly, this event, with odds even lower than winning the lottery jackpot, had barely occurred in decades. At best, they returned with injured children and an unknown father. At worst, they vanished without a trace. Perhaps only one of her fellow villagers, named Yui, had managed to make it, becoming a source of inspiration for the girls from Naha to continue their pursuit. The woman collapsed on the tatami, sobbing. The man was also in a state of despair, overcome with grief and anger. Cry, all you do is cry. I told you to keep an eye on her, what can I do? How can we give our daughter what she wants? The woman, overcome with emotion, lashed out at her husband for once, roaring, if you were any good, would our daughter have run away? Baka, the man, enraged, cursed in Japanese and raised his hand to strike his wife, but finally, seeing the presence of others, he stopped to save face. Seeing this atmosphere, Chi Aragaki tactfully offered to leave. Even a judge might not be able to settle family disputes. Inspector Aragaki was powerless to resolve these family conflicts. She was simply dissatisfied with the current situation. Why did the girls of her tribe have to endure this? How many more girls from Kyun Village or Naha City would face this in the future? She had been powerless to change things before, but now that she had superpowers, could she do something? Thinking about these things, Chi Aragaki walked towards the hills behind Kyun Village. It had been a habit she had developed since childhood. Whenever she felt troubled, she would head to the back mountains. Later, she enrolled at the University of Tokyo and moved to Tokyo to study. After graduation, she passed the civil service exam and joined the Metropolitan Police Department. She married a man in Tokyo, had a son, and lived there ever since. But then, her life took a dramatic turn when an accident killed both her husband and son. Although Chi Aragaki always believed it was retaliation by the Yakuza, her superiors disagreed. Originally a graduate of the University of Tokyo, she had joined the Metropolitan Police Department as a professional officer, starting out in the non-professional division and ending at Inspector General. However, because she persisted in dwelling on the accidental death of her husband, she was reprimanded by her superiors and eventually reassigned to the Okinawa Prefectural Police. Over nearly a decade, she only rose half a rank, while her peers were at best superintendent, and even more so, official superintendent. Of course, this was also partly due to her origins in Kyun Village, Naha, Okinawa. Okinawa and Naha were still within the acceptable range of the island nation's officialdom. After all, the Ryukyu people had little cultural affinity and had long been assimilated into the island nation. The people of Kyum village, however, have never completely abandoned the traces of Chinese culture. The backbone of the Ryukyu Independence Organization is actually descended from the 36 surnames of the Fujian people. How could the cultural heritage of the Ryukyu dynasty possibly compare to that of the Chinese nation? Authentic Ryukyuans have long been accustomed to being vassals of powerful powers, first to the Celestial Empire and later to the island nations of the East, and have never harbored a desire for independence. It is the cultural heritage of the 36 surnames of the Fujian people and the Chinese national virtues passed down through their bloodlines that sustain the Ryukyu Independence Organization. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271, The Opposite of Lee-Mei Barbecue. On the hills behind Kyum village, Chi Aragaki, pondering her future, was suddenly dragged into the illusion created by Nyon. Kyubi-sama, what do you want with me? Unlike the clueless middle school girl, Inspector Aragaki, having long witnessed the cruelties of the world, understood that the nine-tailed fox that had granted her extraordinary powers must be plotting something. But she didn't mind. The adult world was full of transactions, not love or hate without reason. See for yourself, Nyon used an illusion to show Chi Aragaki the plots and covert actions of the heads of the Sumitomo, Mitsui, and Mitsubishi families. She was only halfway through when she was shocked. They want to use the Ryukyu people as sacrifices. The island nation's top brass knew about the American Demon God incident, but Chi Aragaki, a mere police inspector, naturally had no idea. She couldn't even grasp the exact meaning of the three Jebel Masters' words about sacrifice and worship. They're planning to hold a ritual at a location in Ryukyu, sacrificing over 100,000 people to me in an attempt to gain my power, Nyon confessed without hesitation. Aragaki-chi frowned slightly, but considering that this demon had lived for thousands of years and, according to legend, had slaughtered hundreds of thousands of island troops, he must have treated human life with indifference. Furthermore, her current superpowers were bestowed upon her by him. Accusing him of bloodlust and wanton slaughter like a brat was unmanly behavior. Kyubi-sama, is there anything I can do for you? A nine-tailed fox wouldn't come to her with such information for no reason. After all, a ritual should benefit the fox. The fact that this demon was so forthcoming suggested that he had more important matters to attend to. You're very clever, Nyon smiled, holding out a branch and introducing it to Aragaki-chi. This is from a sacred tree. I need you to take it to Tokyo. Ideally, find a spot near the Imperial Palace and plant it in the ground, Aragaki-chi gasped. While she had no idea what the supposed sacred tree branch was capable of, the mention of the Imperial Palace was striking. The nine-tailed fox's target was the Emperor. Recalling the legend, the Emperor summoned the army, onmyoji, sorcerers, and monks to besiege the nine-tailed fox, beating her to death. Now that the nine-tailed fox had returned, it made sense for it to seek revenge on the Emperor. Seeing Chi Aragaki's fantasy, Nyon chuckled to herself. Revenge was true, but it wasn't her who was seeking revenge, it was her boss who was seeking revenge against the Japanese. Seeing Chi Aragaki's silence, Nyon chuckled softly and challenged him. What? You don't dare go. They're about to raise their knives against the Ryukyu people again, and you don't dare go. I can go, but can you guarantee they won't come and massacre them? Chi Aragaki dropped her veneer of modesty, attempting to negotiate on equal terms with the nine-tailed fox. I can guarantee that if you plant a branch of the sacred tree near the Imperial Palace, their plan will be impossible, Nyon laughed. Because they have no idea of the true source of the supernatural power, could it be? Chi Aragaki immediately looked at the branch in Nyon's hand. Stop guessing, Nyon cast a sharp look at her, warning, the sacred tree is spiritual. If you attempt to destroy it, it will immediately return to me, and you and your people will be dead. However, if you complete the task, I will grant you even greater power. You will then be able to do whatever you please with the islanders or the mold. Okay, I promise. Aragaki-chi pondered for a moment and agreed. She had no choice. The Japanese Jebel Masters were sharpening their knives to attack the Ryukyu Islands. Based on her years of understanding of the three major chaebols, she knew that with her current strength, She would be powerless to stop them. The nine-tailed fox sought revenge on the emperor, but what did it have to do with her? Her former husband was indeed a legitimate islander, but after the deaths of her husband and son, her in-laws had disowned her, leaving her with only Qum village. As for why the nine-tailed fox didn't go in person, it was clear that its strength had not yet recovered. After all, according to mythology, the nine-tailed fox's soul was shattered and then sealed in a formation, and now it could only rely on the power of greedy humans. This kind of plot is common in stories, it's logical. When Chieragaki emerged from the illusion, she held a branch from the sacred tree. Holding this unassuming branch, she paused for a moment, then sprinted down the hill toward Naha Airport. She had to rush to Tokyo as quickly as possible, making sure to beat the 3 major chaebols to Okinawa. Any major incident in Tokyo might halt the 3 major chaebols' actions. Even if they continued, she could return to defend her homeland once she possessed even greater supernatural powers. A few hours later, as night fell, Chieragaki arrived at Tokyo Airport. She didn't hail a taxi, but changed into black clothes in the airport restroom and rushed across the tall buildings to the Imperial Palace. A stealth transport plane hovered in the Tokyo sky. Naomi returned to her boss's side and stood obediently. "Do you think I'm being a bit fussy?" Lin Hao glanced at Naomi. Naomi wanted to say yes, but she didn't understand why she'd been running around all day and night, just to find 2 jewels. She could handle all of this on her own. It was nothing more than throwing a branch of the sacred tree at the Japanese Imperial Palace. What was the big deal? If she did it, even throwing it directly into the old Japanese's bedroom would be easy, not to mention just near the Imperial Palace. "We have to be the good guys, understand?" Lin Hao earnestly taught his subordinates. "Conquering the entire world by force may seem fast, but resistance movements in various countries will inevitably drag us into an endless security war. So we have to create a big scene first, force them to beg us to quell the rebellion. That way, we'll be the good guys, the saviors. America has a strong foundation and can hold out for a few more rounds, but the Japanese are different. They might not even be able to withstand a single round. Boss, you're wise. Boss, your plan will bring peace to the world." The monsters huddled together on the XN plane all smiled flatteringly. "Get lost. It's your turn. Be smart. Make a big scene in the downtown area. Rip the villa district down. That old bastard Li Mei only targets the poor areas, leaving the Imperial Palace and the wealthy areas alone. I can't stand it. You should do the opposite. Leave the wealthy areas completely wiped out, and spare the poor. Boss, don't worry. I guarantee a targeted explosion." The spirits of demons and monsters pierced through the transport plane's hull and appeared in the Tokyo night sky, revealing themselves one after another. For a moment, the massive shadows of the demons and monsters stretched across the night sky, even obscuring the bright moonlight. Just as the demons were unleashed, Chieragaki arrived near the Imperial Palace. Unable to approach the palace, she found the nearest green belt and planted a branch of the sacred tree in the soil. "I don't mean to be anti-rich. I respect all those who work hard to become wealthy, but in war, it's often the children of poor families who go on the battlefield. Yet, the West still favors aristocratic warfare, favoring the nobility and the wealthy. I know that reality is unfair, but at least I can write some plots that I like in the books I write." Chapter 272, July 15th, hundreds of ghosts rumble in Tokyo. On the 15th day of the 7th month, the full moon is in the sky. It's advisable to demolish houses and walls, but avoid all other activities. Director Lin said we should listen to our ancestors and follow the lunar calendar. Suddenly, the spirits of over 100 demons and monsters appeared in the Tokyo night sky, revealing their true forms and shadows, obscuring the sky and the moon. There were tree demons, snake demons, tiger demons, insect demons, blood demons, fire demons, the zombie king, the red demon king, the king of Jiangdu, mud giants, 3-faced monsters, and the little thunder god, a vast variety, each with its own unique characteristics. Tokyo residents, navigating the neon lights, didn't immediately notice the sudden obstruction of the moonlight until the clear night sky suddenly began to scatter with a patter of raindrops. "It's raining, what's going on?" The weather forecast clearly said no rain this week. How could it be possible? The rain is red. Who's doing this prank? No, it's all over the streets. Why is the rain so sticky and smells fishy? This, who is this? Whose woman is bleeding so profusely? And spraying all over the streets, clearly, with the exception of the drunks, Tokaiites quickly realized that this rain was unusual. "It's blood," exclaimed in surprise. "It's raining blood." The blood demon, mindful of his boss's instructions, first made a scene in the downtown area. A bloody rain blanketed central Tokyo, marking the bloody beginning of the night. As shocked and curious eyes turned to the sky, Tokaiites discovered the presence of a new demonic presence in the night sky. "Something's happening." A monster, a tree demon, over 20 meters tall, sat down at the Shibuya intersection. Though a phantom, its demonic power imbued it with physical force. Countless roots and branches pierced through the intersection and the surrounding buildings. "Let me add fuel to the fire." The fire demon rushed over to join in the fun. A ball of pure flame essence streaked through the night sky, spewing a column of fire toward the intersection. "Fire demon, are you stirring up trouble?" the tree demon roared at the fire demon. Their attributes were mutually exclusive. They had been at odds since their time in the demon locking tower. Now that their true forms were gone and only their spirits remained, their mutual dislike persisted. "Sorry, I sprayed the wrong place," the fire essence laughed. "It's because the Japanese are so small, idiot. Get some action." The blood demon, bleeding profusely, immediately lectured the hot-tempered and clueless fire demon. "Did you forget the boss was watching? You want to die, huh?" The fire demon regained his composure, glanced guiltily toward the sky, and immediately turned and rushed towards the wealthy neighborhood he had targeted. There's a simple way to distinguish between the poor and the wealthy in Tokyo. In the central city, the shorter and larger the houses, the wealthier the residents. This is especially true of buildings in the traditional Japanese style, which are often out of reach even with money. Following Lin Hao's prearranged mission, demons with mass destruction abilities rushed to the wealthy areas and began their raid. The fire demons took the lead, setting fires with even greater precision than Li Mei's barbecue. Larger, less mobile demons, such as tree demons and mud giants, spread out across the downtown area, creating a more powerful presence. Within 2 or 3 minutes of the demon's appearance, the imperial palace and the prime minister's official residence in Chiyoda received the news. The aging emperor walked from his bedroom to the corridor, gazing at the blood-stained night sky, a gloomy look on his face. Is Tokyo about to become the next Washington? The resurrection of the gods and demons was no secret among the leaders of various nations. What happened in Washington had long been public knowledge. A few days ago, NASA captured the legendary Celestial Palace on Mars. To prevent a single Eastern power from monopolizing the Celestial Palace, the United States proactively released all the information, hoping to entice the desires of the leaders of various nations and make it the property of all mankind, shared by all. The appearance of the Celestial Palace wasn't just a pretense that Lin Hao had dangled before the eyes of the nations, it also completely opened a prelude to the advent of the gods and demons. Simply put, it was a forewarning, preparing everyone for the endless spectacle to come. And so, tonight, the action in Tokyo resumed. Your Majesty, do not worry. The spirits of the previous emperors are in heaven and will surely bless the Yamato people, the imperial attendant said, reassuringly. Go and hear Prime Minister Higashiyama's plan. The elderly emperor waved his hand, and the attendant hurriedly contacted the Minister of the Interior, who had already departed for the Prime Minister's residence. Meanwhile, inside the Prime Minister's residence, Eiichi Toyama convened another emergency meeting. This time, all the cabinet ministers in Tokyo rushed to the meeting, no longer deliberately shirking responsibility. Since the implementation of the Greater Capital Strategy, Tokyo has become the center of the island nation, with a population of 37 million and over one-third of GDP generated from 3.5% of the country's land area. They could have ignored the extraordinary events that occurred in Osaka's food street. There was no point in caring about it with mold poop around. But the events that occurred in Tokyo tonight have touched the hearts of all the island nation's top officials, because this is their base camp, their lifeblood. Have the self-defense forces arrived? Eiichi Toyama grabbed the phone and connected with a defense minister, who was still on the way, and spoke loudly to him for the first time. What? Stuck in traffic, do you know? If they don't come, Tokyo's doomed. In reality, the Heisei Otacus were already terrified by the sight of the sea of blood and the various bizarre demons floating in the sky, finding all sorts of excuses to refuse to leave the camp. They were just here to work and get paid, right? If the recruitment agency hadn't hired idle groups to dress up in miniskirts, they wouldn't have come to carry such heavy guns. Only the sons of former samurai and wealthy military families still retained some courage. However, these men became officers upon joining the self-defense forces. As in the Japanese police force, the starting point for these wealthy sons is the end point for ordinary people. In battle, officers from wealthy families would simply stand back and shout, "Charge!" The new generation of Heisei sons didn't even have the courage to emulate their predecessors and lead the charge. "Sir, my stomach hurts, it's over. My legs are cramping, Mom, this is terrible. I want to go home." Seeing the widespread avoidance of the war in the camp, the wealthy officers were furious. "Get up, asshole, this is useless." There are officers who are incompetent and furious, and there are also officers who are quick to react. Everyone who fights today will receive a reward of 1 million yen. Also, afterward, we'll invite Tokyo's top 10 idol groups to perform for 3 consecutive days. You can wear any uniform or nothing at all. Suddenly, many of the otaku who had just been holding their stomachs and crying out in pain suddenly felt no more pain. "Sir, please lead us to defend Tokyo." "That's right, this cute little sister needs my help." I admit, this chapter is a bit exaggerated. Heisei otaku shouldn't be that useless, right? Chapter 273 Tokyo, it's so hot. The self-defense forces stationed near Tokyo received orders to immediately rush to the downtown area to eliminate, or at least disperse, the demons and monsters causing chaos. Just as the officers racked their brains, offering plausible explanations and finally coaxing the Heisei otakus onto the transports, they suddenly received new orders. What? Residential areas in Chiyoda, Minato, and Satagaya are under attack. Without hesitation, the officers, hailing from wealthy families, ordered their convoys to turn around and head for the wealthy neighborhoods. Their homes were in those very same areas. The poor in the downtown area? Come on, my family is suffering, and you're asking me to abandon them to save strangers? Is that inhumane? As expected, the self-defense forces headed for the wealthy areas, which were being targeted by demons and monsters, while completely ignoring the bustling districts of Shibuya, Ginza, and Shinjuku. But when they arrived, they discovered something tragic. Their weapons were completely incapable of harming the demons' bodies, because they had no physical form. When they needed to wreak havoc, they used their demonic power to cast spells. When faced with damage, they could simply dissolve into nothingness and evade it. Aside from the unreplenishable consumption of soul essence, there were no other drawbacks. If it weren't for completing the boss's mission, they'd be completely out of their minds. Damn it! Our weapons can't destroy it. A fireball blasted towards them, blasting the self-defense force's troop carrier. "You ain't. How dare you shoot me?" The furious fire demon continuously channeled his essence power, attacking the self-defense force fiercely. Go to hell. Ha ha ha! Of the boss's mission tonight, the fire demon was undoubtedly the most dedicated. The 2 old men, the Red Ghost King and the Jiangdu King, were clearly slacking off, using only subtle techniques to conserve their essence power to the greatest extent possible. They used illusions to trick the residents of the wealthy district into ascending high-rise buildings, leaping from their bodies, or setting their own homes ablaze, smiling as they laid down in their flaming beds. Gazing at the fire demon, darting left and right in the night sky, working incredibly hard, the Red Ghost King sneered, "Fool! You've exhausted your essence. Even if you return to your physical form, your future will be uncertain." Beside him, King Jiangdu chimed in, "That's right. Anyway, the boss only demands the mission be completed, and there are no restrictions on how to proceed." The slacking duo looked down on the hard-working little fire demon, and the fire demon, in turn, looked down on the 2 pedantic and slow-witted old ghosts. The boss could even create a heavenly palace with ease, so replenishing its fire essence wouldn't be difficult. Forget about anything else, simply let it devour a few more fire Kirins. Wouldn't that replenish it? Elemental monsters like the fire demon and the blood demon can at least find alternative replenishments in the Marvel universe, but other unique monsters are more difficult. It's no wonder they behave differently. Whether slacking off or working hard, none of the over 100 demons dared to disobey Lin Hao's orders, each executing the pre-planned plan. While thunder roared in the downtown area with little rain, the wealthy district erupted in flames, and tragedy was everywhere. Lin Hao made up for what Li Mei hadn't been willing to do. Intelligence from all quarters was quickly relayed back to the Imperial Palace and the Prime Minister's official residence in Chiyoda. In reality, no subordinates were needed to relay the news. These island nations' top brass had already experienced firsthand the tangible pressure posed by the demonic forces. Prime Minister, gentlemen, the officer responsible for protecting the Prime Minister's official residence hurried into the conference room, frantically shouting, Please seek refuge in the underground bunker immediately. A large number of demons are wreaking havoc nearby and will soon approach the residence, where Godzilla hadn't dared to tread. The demons from the demon locking tower showed no concern. Oh no! His Majesty is in danger. Toyama Eiichi's first thought was of their great emperor. The Grand Secretary abruptly rose and broke into a run, ignoring everyone else, leaving the conference room and rushing towards the Imperial Palace. With a resounding boom, a giant, covered in mud, descended from the sky. After making its debut in the downtown area, the mud giant raced to Chiyoda for a show. Unlike other demons and monsters, a mud giant's body can be made from locally available materials. Its spirit burrows underground, and upon rising, it instantly creates a massive mud body. While ordinary mud certainly can't compare to precious celestial materials like the five-color divine soil or the silent soil, it stands out for its ease of use. Its earth-shaking nature, when manipulated, possesses unparalleled destructive power against buildings. Hey, another piece collapsed. The mud giant's body was covered in abstract, distorted white human faces, shaped from the resentment of the people it had devoured. Rising from beneath the Prime Minister's residence, the 100-meter-tall mud giant suddenly spotted a shrine not far to the southeast. The spirits here stink, but I like the stench. The mud giant transformed into a wave and rushed southeastward toward the Yasukuni shrine, soon engulfing the filthy, fetid cesspool. The Prime Minister's official residence was reduced to a crumbling ruin, with heavy casualties. The aging emperor's prediction was correct. Tokyo had indeed become a second Washington. Seeing their descendants perished, successive emperors showed no reaction. Clearly, their spirits in heaven were useless. The demons and monsters had only been here for 10 minutes, and they had already inflicted heavy damage on Tokyo. Civilian areas were hushed, as if forgotten, while the areas occupied by the powerful were a scene of hell. Damn it, Lieutenant General Mold, at Yokota Air Base, was furious at the sight of his own backyard. Man-made disasters were useless. Only in the face of natural disasters would these self-proclaimed superiors truly realize that all men are created equal was not an empty phrase. But if even their great Washington was reduced to ash by mushroom bombs, why shouldn't a mere Tokyo experience the same fate? This thought brightened his spirits. Regardless of his mood, he still had to do what needed to be done. Send a squadron first. Videos of the battle between demons and the self-defense forces had been transmitted back. Seeing that the monsters couldn't be destroyed by conventional weapons, Vice Admiral Mold hesitated to commit too many troops at once, fearing they might never return. Play it safe, test the waters. Mold's plane flew over Tokyo 20 minutes after the incident, but their efforts were futile. While liquid nitrogen might have been a viable option against a fire demon, Mold's conventional weaponry offered no defense against the demons. As the plane arrived, several massive demons pierced through the hull and charged directly into the pilot's brain. A moment's loss of consciousness resulted in the destruction of the plane and the death of the pilot. Demons might be protected by magic or energy shields, but ordinary aircraft hulls lack such capabilities. With their attempts at suppression failing, the island nation's dignitaries fell into despair. The elderly emperor had descended onto the express train beneath the imperial palace, preparing for a strategic retreat. He recalled his father's visit to Tokyo when Mold had landed, and now he was back. A revisit to the old place. Chapter 274 The roots of the sacred tree pierced the heart of the gods. Before the express train even started, another shocking incident occurred. A massive tree root, seemingly from nowhere, broke through the thick reinforced concrete tunnel, severing the tracks and blocking the express train. Bakeyoshi, the commander of the Imperial Guard, responsible for protecting the emperor, erupted in curses. Yoko, leave first. Perhaps because he had experienced great battles in his childhood, the old emperor remained calmer than his middle-aged son. Hi, the commander of the Imperial Guard hurried over and saluted. Just as they were about to return to the Imperial Palace grounds, the ground suddenly began to shake. Earthquake? No, it must be another damn demon. A thin vine suddenly stretched out. Your Majesty, Commander Yakako threw himself forward, only to be swept away by the vine. The next second, countless white ribbons wrapped him in a human-shaped cocoon and quickly dragged him away. Hurry, run, the elderly emperor shouted, and the middle-aged prince followed his advice and took off running. In the end, he couldn't escape. Countless vines swept over, precisely targeting every living being, transforming any still breathing into human cocoons and dragging them away. Thick roots raced through the earth, easily tearing apart any trace of humanity. Above the ground, a towering tree suddenly appeared near the imperial palace, its vast trunk easily covering the palace, its dragon-like roots destroying the ancient buildings. Atop a distant high-rise building, Chieragaki, who had just regained her footing, stared blankly at the suddenly rising sacred tree, unable to believe that this was the branch she had inserted into the landscaping more than 20 minutes ago. As soon as she inserted the branch into the landscaping, demons and monsters descended into the Tokyo night sky, and chaos ensued. Chieragaki even considered helping, after all, having lived in the city for 13 years and had some attachment to it. Only then, after hearing the message from the nine-tailed fox, did she realize that these demons and monsters had been released by the fox to buy time for the sacred tree to grow. After some deliberation, Chieragaki feared antagonizing the unpredictable nine-tailed fox and opted to stay away. With something so serious happening, Sumitomo, Mitsui, and Mitsubishi probably won't be able to attend the sacrifices, she thought, finally letting out a sigh of relief. Clearly, the sudden growth of the sacred tree was due to Lin Hao's manipulation of the power of time. His judgment proved correct. The sacred tree must absorb a sufficient amount of planetary energy to produce the chakra fruit. This energy could come from humans, animals, or even the planet itself. The mysterious dimension linked to the little demon couldn't even be destroyed by the eternal explosion, so how could the mere colonial tools of the Otsutsuki clan absorb such energy? Now that it had arrived on Earth and taken root in the Oriental Islands, the planet's energy continuously flowed into the sacred tree. The trunk of the sacred tree soared with visible speed, surpassing 10,000 meters in the blink of an eye, like a sharp blade piercing the night sky. To those who didn't know, they might have thought it was poised to overturn the heavens. From the imperial palace, its roots spread outward. Roads, skyscrapers, hills, rivers, even the sea itself proved unable to stop these swarming giant pythons. 100 miles of land was completely destroyed, and the 6 central districts became a plantation for the sacred tree. The sacred tree, firmly rooted in the island nation, countless vines began to capture living things. All Tokyo residents, bound by white ribbons into human cocoons, found themselves in a dreamlike world. In this world, their wishes came true. In this world, they could do anything. Catalyzed by the power of time, the buds at the top of the sacred tree quickly blossomed, but the fruit did not immediately appear. Finally, "We've caught you," Lin Hao immediately ordered several veteran monsters skilled in earth escape techniques to drill down along the sacred tree's roots, using their vision to observe the world beneath. As a special tool used by the Otsutsuki clan for interstellar colonization, the sacred tree possessed a spirit, and upon arriving at a new planet, it would proactively drill towards the most energy-rich areas. The sacred tree, initially capturing Tokyo residents on the surface to create human cocoons, suddenly sensed a terrifyingly powerful life force deep beneath the earth. After a moment's hesitation, the tree unleashed its full force, drilling deep into the earth. An old demon skilled in earth escape quickly reached the end of the tree's roots, over 1,000 kilometers below the surface, deep within the mantle. A dazzling golden light blocked the tree's path, preventing it from advancing. In a seemingly tug-of-war, the tree countered this with stellar energy drawn from elsewhere, starving the fruit atop its tree of energy and delaying its ripening. Clearly, the tree was seeking a larger harvest to produce fuller fruit. It attempted to break through the golden light and penetrate the fully grown, imminently emerging celestial beings. This was a member of the Celestials, deliberately sent to Earth over 4 billion years ago. The once tiny embryo had been nurtured in the Earth's core for over 4 billion years, continuously growing thanks to Earth's energy. In another 10 years, it would break free, marking the day of Earth's destruction. The golden light was clearly the Celestials' means of protecting their infant members. Clearing, Lin Hao instructed several veteran monsters skilled in Earth escape. After giving the order, Lin Hao grabbed a Denden Mushi and called Zheng Xian. "Prepare for a flexive muscle. Move the ring fortress over the island nation. Also, notify the World Security Council for an emergency meeting. They should already know, the Eternals and the Celestials will be here soon." Zheng Xian nodded in agreement and went about his preparations. A moment later, a space was cleared by the veteran monsters, and Lin Hao teleported in. Without a word, he unleashed a dragon-shaped kick and waved towards the golden light ahead. After a loud bang, the golden light exploded. The roots of the sacred tree thrust themselves into the golden light, arriving in the blink of an eye before the sleeping Celestials. They wrapped around their massive red form and stabbed fiercely at their heart. Instantly, the Celestial's massive form began to tremble. Across the land, unexplained earthquakes erupted, active volcanoes erupted, and tsunamis swept through. People in India, South America, Australia, Northern Canada, and the United States paused their work, looking up toward the eastern island nation. "No, this is impossible," muttered Ajak, the leader of the Eternals. Tina, in the central Australian wasteland, suddenly clutched her head and cried out in pain. "Go away, get out of here, no, don't come here, who am I? I'm dead." Memories once erased by the Celestial suddenly returned to Tina's mind, causing her pain and disrupting her sense of self. "Tina, what's wrong with you?" Gilgamesh rushed over from the kitchen, his face filled with anxiety. Tina suddenly manifested a lightsaber and slashed at him. The Eternals on Earth were alarmed, and the Celestials in the depths of the universe were also alarmed. Chapter 275, The Divine Spear Bureau arrives in Tokyo. Dear viewers, here's an urgent news interruption. A large-scale attack by supernatural beings has occurred in the island nation of Tokyo. These strangely shaped and diverse supernatural beings are considered demons, devils, ghosts, and monsters in Eastern mythology. It's clear that the outbreak of supernatural events is no longer limited to America. The entire world faces the threat of supernatural forces. Our world is undergoing drastic changes. Where does humanity go from here? The 100 Demons Night Parade in Tokyo quickly sparked another frenzy in the global media. However, the globalization of supernatural events has also inevitably led people around the world to worry about the future. Will the authorities be able to protect us? If the next supernatural event hits our city, will the authorities also drop a nuclear bomb? What can humans do against supernatural beings? A flood of distrust of the national authorities began to emerge online, especially in America, which had already dropped a nuclear bomb on Washington, D.C., and was bombarded with online criticism. Shortly after the demons and monsters descended upon Tokyo, the World Security Council convened an emergency meeting regarding the Tokyo incident. Online comments undoubtedly had a significant impact on the sentiments of the representatives of the 5 major powers. "I believe the island nation's authorities are incapable of resolving the Tokyo incident," the British representative eagerly stated. "The SWBA must be deployed. The SWBA was established to respond to incidents like this. I agree with aiding Tokyo. This massive tree won't disappear overnight. It will take considerable time to study, and perhaps it will provide another channel for understanding the supernatural," the Mao representative also stated. The Gallic representative glanced at the American and Chinese representatives and unexpectedly took the initiative, saying, "Tokyo clearly needs international assistance. The SWBA could deploy personnel to Tokyo until this incident is resolved." Of the 5 major powers, despite the numerous disasters they have endured over the past 2 years, the United States has undoubtedly secured a significant amount of supernatural remnants. While China has always maintained a low profile, as a fellow major power, they are all aware of the existence of the SWBA. The 2 nations currently vying for supremacy possess rich historical heritage. With the exception of England, which boasts a magic school, neither Great Britain nor Gallicus possesses even a trace of the supernatural. The world has dramatically changed, and supernatural powers may become another crucial indicator of national strength. In a world of intense contention, those who don't fight will fall behind, and falling behind will lead to being attacked. No, according to the Daily Security Treaty, the crisis in Tokyo falls solely on the shoulders of the United States. The Americans clearly intend to reap the benefits for themselves. They don't care how many Japanese soldiers die, but they must secure every last bit of the spoils. What a joke, the Great Britain representative sneered. Why didn't you say no back when it was SHIELD? We've been involved in numerous missions against island nations. If your country had the ability to resolve the Tokyo incident, we wouldn't have to worry. But your air force was annihilated in a single encounter. It seems you don't have the capability, do you? Ever since the establishment of the magic school, England has become more confident, gradually forgetting the rules of being a subordinate and adopting a more assertive tone. The American representative, our country, was eager to declare that the issue would be resolved no matter the cost, but the specific level of effort wasn't something he, as a representative, could commit to. The Chinese representative glanced at the scowling American representative and maintained his usual reserved demeanor. With 3 votes in favor, even if America didn't want other nations interfering in its own backyard, there was nothing they could do. The World Security Council was a secret institution established by the 5 major powers to circumvent United Nations procedures. Once a consensus was reached within the five major powers, other countries would be powerless even if they wanted to resist. Furthermore, the Japanese had been constantly oppressed by mold, leaving them inherently vulnerable. Seeing the silence return to the meeting room, the Chinese representative casually stated, "Since everyone agrees to reinforce Tokyo, the SHIA should also contribute. Their aviation equipment will arrive over Tokyo shortly." Indeed, the ring fortress had only just reached the western part of the island nation, and it would take several minutes to reach the eastern part. Later meant later, a key point of honesty and trustworthiness. The World Security Council's resolution was quickly relayed back to the five major powers. The other four naturally welcomed it, having long anticipated that this outcome would be inevitable unless the Americans turned the tables. Could the Americans, plagued by so much, now have the nerve to turn the tables? With the entire Toyama Eiichi cabinet missing, even the emperor of the island nation was nowhere to be found. The resolution of the five major powers could not be conveyed to the island nation's authorities, forcing them to act first. After all, human lives were at stake, and the residents of Tokyo were in dire straits. Dire straits isn't just an adjective, it's realistic description. Zheng Xian, leading the elite SWAT team, flew to Tokyo in a ring fortress, just in time to receive the World Security Council's resolution. SWORD's three aerospace carriers were also rushing to Tokyo at top speed. While the American agents were feeling gloomy, SWORD agents from the other four nations looked forward to the wonderful life in a future where the five nations jointly governed Tokyo. Everyone wanted the expatriate benefits that the mold soldiers had enjoyed for decades. In particular, the Spear Bureau's action team, led by Xiao Yi, had longed to descend fully armed upon Tokyo, and now their dream had finally come true. The 100 demons raiding Tokyo incident came suddenly, and the island nation's authorities collapsed swiftly, with the five major powers reacting with equal urgency. Less than 2 minutes after the roots of the sacred tree pierced the heart of the Celestials, hiding in the Earth's core, the pre-prepared ring fortresses were already hovering over Tokyo. At roughly the same time, Makari, the speedster of the Eternals, emerged from the sea, trailing a long golden streak. The so-called Eternals were essentially tools created by the Celestials to safeguard their descendants. The Celestials are a small group, and before giving birth, female Celestials select a planet or star to give birth on, placing their offspring within the planet for development. This gestation period can last for thousands of years. Such a lengthy period is bound to present countless risks, especially since the activities of indigenous life on planets capable of harboring life could pose a threat to the Celestials' offspring. For example, if the indigenous life forms develop weapons that can destroy the entire planet during the gestation period of the Celestials, once a war breaks out, the planet may be destroyed, and the Celestials that have not developed well inside the planet will also be doomed. Therefore, in order to protect their descendants, the adult Celestials deliberately created a group of tool humans to maintain the stability of the target planet. In order to prevent the tool humans from doubting their own existence, the Celestials deliberately created a group of mutants and gave them the mission of eliminating the mutants. It is euphemistically called protecting indigenous life. I feel that I may have written too much. The traffic has been very low recently, and the average daily increase in collections is half of the previous one. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.